My name is Quinn, and I first learned about Transform VC in mid-October when general partner Rama Chakaki visited North Carolina, actually Guilford College in Greensboro, North Carolina. This was part of Transform VC's Impact a Billion Roadshow. And so a comment that I made earlier in the day caught Rama's eye, or caught her ear as well. And so then later in the day, I heard Rama speak about the Transform VC's mission to invest in 1,000 tech founders, which will make a billion and impact a billion. And after she said that, I was hooked. So I knew that I wanted to meet Rama, and fortunately for me, Rama wanted to meet me as well. 1 week later, she invited me to join the next fellowship cohort. And at the beginning of November, I joined the Transform VC family. So I'm very excited. And I have plenty of other cohort members here to join me too. I'm going to turn things over to Rama in just 1 minute, but I wanted to share my why, my reason for joining the team. I'm inspired by Transform VC's commitment to driving change and fostering an environment where underrepresented voices are not only heard, but they are celebrated. Being a part of this team is incredibly exciting, as I get the privilege of being part of the force that's shaping the landscape of venture capital, making it more inclusive and representative of the world we live in. Throughout today's event, you'll hear from our amazing general partners, Rama Chakaki and Raed Masri, about how they started Transform VC. You'll hear from the change agent himself, Mr. James Lowry, and you'll also hear from several of our founders that Transform VC has already invested in. Each conversation that you'll be hearing today represents the theme of our event. AI plus impact equals transformations, radical change. And now to Rama Chakaki for the rest.
Thank you. All right. So by a show of hands, how many of you have invested in any of these companies pre-IPO? One.
Are you going to check our hands?
We might check, yeah. Well, for those of you who haven't, you might have missed on making a couple of million and a couple of hundreds of million, but more importantly, you missed out on the impact that these companies have on politics, society, and the environment. Now, whether it's positive or negative impact, this affects us all. But you're in good company because our government and legislators are often failing to understand and legislate and manage the negative impact that some of these disruptive technologies have. And with many of these tech giants having valuations that equate to country GDPs, they have tremendous resources. And with those resources and global influence comes responsibility. So the question is, are they acting responsibly? Well, they reach billions of users globally and amass data on all of us, with very little to no disclosure on how this data is being used. There's an ongoing concern on how little these tech giants are supporting their local communities, like right here in San Francisco. And online retailers have a huge cost to the environment, with weak to no plans on how to impact or mitigate that impact. And more recently, we've been hearing about the smartphone technology or industry and the mining of coolant and endangering Congolese men, women, and children. I'm not saying that all of these companies are corrupt or undermining their philanthropy, but there is mounting evidence that they can do more. And doing good while doing good business is an intent that starts at the beginning of their journey, and their investors and the community around them hold them accountable to it and support them in achieving it. And the champion of social impact came from our community. Mr. Yunus, who won a Nobel Peace Prize for his work, he showed us the way by disrupting the banking sector and showing us that you can both make profit and have positive impact on those who matter most. So what would it take to invest in and nurture 1,000 tech founders who would each impact a billion and make a billion? Well, first, focus on a niche community, and you can start with those you know. And for us, we found that like Mr. Yunus, our community of Middle Eastern, brown, black men and women are category kings and queens in entertainment, in sports, and in policy. Who is their tech equivalent? There are a number, people like Tope, people like May Habib, people like Helmi Touhi. The community does exist, yet there is far more unlocked talent that we hope to see represented in Silicon Valley. And this is where a tech VC like ourselves comes in, to unleash and scale those hidden talents and gems to do right and do good business. So at Transform, we see a future where tech drives positive climate and social change. And the way we look to invest in founders like the ones we just saw is, first, we identify founders that are looking at deep tech, AI, robotics, others, network effects, and that they have a minimum 10x advantage over the competition. And Raed will tell you a little bit more about that later. We also look for founders who care deeply about impact, and that the criteria that we typically look for is, number one, the founder themselves come from a community that is underserved or underrepresented. Second, that they employ folks who are underserved and underrepresented. And last, that the outcome of their business has a positive impact on a vulnerable community. Now, with this, we've got the tech VC, we've got the niche community, and we've got the impact. But how do we really unlock this impact? Well, in the 15 years that I've worked in the impact sector, I've come across a very, let's say, tangible analogy. And it came from an unexpected place, a TED Talk by Alain de Botton on Atheism 2.0. In this TED Talk, Alain says, there's a lot for us to learn, for atheists to learn from the most established social institutions in the world and the most impactful. And those are religions. He invites atheists not to dismiss religions, but rather learn from how they were able to have millions and millions of followers throughout the years. And here are some of the things that religions do that we can learn from on our founders' journey of impact. Number one, religions always have a long-term vision. They invite you to think from now until the hereafter about your plans. Second, they invite us to think of ourselves not just as brains, but we're bodies, we connect to nature, and with this connection to nature, we're able to be more inspired and more in spirit. Third, religions treat everybody like their children. You have to be on a constant learning journey. So if you are a tech founder like Hassan here, he's constantly learning about the different ways that he needs to impact his society positively. And you don't just tell someone once, you have these daily affirmations. So religions invite us to pray daily, to connect with everything around us. And so that these daily affirmations about what is impact, how am I doing it, have to happen on a regular basis. And then religions invite the power of community. So we're not alone at times of celebration or at times of difficulties, when markets are low, when the only thing I can think about is the money coming in. The community invites you to reconsider and shape your perspective around impact, not just funding alone. And other things that religions do is they reach everyone by simplifying the language. So you'll hear from our founders later on how they're really trying to focus on what is that impact, not how great is the technology that I'm building, because they want to establish connections with everyone in every language. And last but not least, all religions have eloquent speakers, and our founders are such themselves, and they're always constantly improving. And I'll loop back to the financial backing. Without the church or other establishments, religious institutions would fail. They provide the funding, and like that, the VC community provides the funding for the founders. So we started with a group of interns, a small group at the beginning of, I think, 2022. And those interns represented our founders. They looked like them. They believed in our mission. From that, we grew to, I think, over 20 advisors. Some of them are represented here, and about 39 or 40 interns and fellows. And what's great is that 40% of them are female. All of them have the characteristics of the founders that we believe in. We moved from there to setting up the Impact a Billion Roadshow, where we were going from one city to another across the United States to rally impact investors, to rally founders that cared about community and the community themselves who could support them. So we were able to meet over 80 organizations that represented over 2,000 people, all of whom shared our mission, our interest in impact. And from this approach, this is some of the outcome. You'll meet Kerwin in a little bit, who's having a great impact on education. He's our latest founder in Fund 2, and we were very excited to have him with us. Someone like Hanadi Youssef, who's working on aging by building a computational drug discovery platform that's powered by AI to address chronic illnesses. You'll hear from Ali Auradi's company, Tonal, and what impact they have on health. And then last but not least, you'll hear from many more, but on the climate side, you'll hear from Khaled Hassounah about what Apple is doing. So in short, we're investing and hope to invest in 1,000 tech founders who would impact a billion and make a billion. In order to do that successfully, we look for advisors, investors to join forces and the larger community to support our founders. And I invite you here to join us all on this journey. Thank you. And now we'll turn online to Mr. James Lowry. First of all, we're honored to have you with us. A little bit about your bio. Ms. Lowry is a business icon, a sought-after speaker, and a strategic advisor, a nationally recognized workforce and supplier diversity expert and pioneer. Mr. Lowry was the first African-American consultant in McKinsey back in 1968. He later became the first African-American senior partner at the Boston Consulting Group. Mr. Lowry inspired us at Transform with his book, Change Agent, a life dedicated to creating wealth for minorities. And thank you so much, Mr. Lowry, for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
So to start with, Mr. Lowry, why did you write Change Agent?
That's a great question. That was not my original intention to write a book, but I've had a class at Northwestern University's School of Business since 1996. And so it was my students who said, you know, you share so many stories, you share wisdom, you share insights. Why don't you write a book? And I said, okay, I will take a chance at it. And the more I started writing, the more I got inspired. Because I think too often, especially people of color, have not had a real insight on what the free enterprise system was all about, how it was moved, who were the players, and really the potential impact that capital could have on really narrowing the wealth gap. So it was based on that I wrote the book. I thought I was taking some chances in writing the book because I really spoke from the heart. I had nothing to lose. And I shared some insights that I thought might be useful to moving the agenda. But I also did it because I really wanted people to take me on, to really question what I thought or what I presented or the recommendations that I made, at least getting us in moving in the right direction. So that's why I wrote the book. And surprisingly, I haven't been lynched yet, and so people are still buying. So I guess it's okay.
So, I mean, I imagine it was very well received. We loved it. Tell us a little bit about the 10-point plan for Black empowerment in America.
Yeah, that came out of, once again, maybe frustration, because I felt that too often politicians, civil rights leaders, and others would have a tendency to define the problems bisecting our community, really challenging them to think on Monday morning what they're going to do differently. You know, and I've been in this. This is my purpose in life, as you alluded to, was to really have an impact on people less fortunate than myself. And I was hearing the problems. I know I was part of the problem. I came from the inner city. I know what the problems are, but very few of our politicians and leaders were saying, what are we going to do differently? So I said, let me put 10 things on the plate and let people look at it, question it, debate it. I don't care, but let's come up with a plan. Ossie Davis, famous actor and civil rights leader, said, look, it's not the man. This was after King was assassinated. It's not the man, it's the plan. And we never had a plan. So I said, I'm going to put my 10 points on the table. And if somebody has better 10 points, God bless them. I didn't care. But one of the things that was so important to me was point number one. And I think there are reasons for this. But I felt in our communities, people did not understand the value of capital. And as you articulated so brilliantly in your presentation, capital back religions, back communities, back countries, changed the world. And we were kind of going in this role where we thought the government could do everything for us. No, the government can be the catalyst. There can be policies passed or legislation passed. But at the end of the day, it's capital and how capital is being used and utilized to affect change. We have been denied that knowledge on that. And too often, many of the people who are perceived as leaders, some of them are leaders, only thought in terms of the problem. And I've said to people, and one is my own nephew, who's an elected official, I said, Black people can always get reelected just talking about the problem. We know what the problems are, but and they're deep and impactful. But what are we going to do on Monday? And so that's what I did that. So, the first thing I said is you got to deal with capital. And I think what you're talking about, what we're talking about, and that's why you got me when you called me up. You said, oh, here's our mission. I said, well, your mission is what I've been working on for about 40 or 50 years to try and be a part of. But I was saying the other thing is to change the mindset of our people, especially the younger people, because I think we have been so influenced that our mindset was too small. It was thinking in terms of, on Monday morning, little firms. And I'll be candid again. Last week I was in New York. I was in DC. It was a rough week, but it was a good week. But I spoke at JP Morgan Chase, and they had several people kept talking about small businesses and small businesses and small businesses. And I finally just had to challenge them. I said, look, I'm all for small businesses, but until we start creating billion-dollar businesses, we will never have an impact on our communities, be it in California, Chicago, New York, or wherever. We have to change our mindset on growth. We have to change our mindset on how we strategically work with others. We have to change our mindset on what we can do. And so that was the other thing that I tried to do. That was point number two. And I was very candid in point number three, where I was saying, we got to support people who get it, people who have demonstrated they can have an impact on our communities, and stop supporting, well-intentioned people, but people who don't get it. And they're going to keep continuing down a path that's not going to help anybody. And why should we support them? Why should we reelect them? Why should we have anything to do? We have to come up with our own cadre of leaders who have vision, who think big, who can think globally. And so I said that. I thought I would get, smacked upside the face for saying that, but I didn't. Many people were saying, Larry, you're right. We should have said this a long time ago. And I think the same thing is true with elected officials, civil rights leaders, et cetera. I think the other thing that I put in the 10 points was the importance of getting people, as you kind of alluded to as well, in key positions who are at the table when policies are made. In this month, in a couple of weeks, there's going to be the business roundtable. You know how powerful the business roundtable is. But how many people that we would feel comfortable representing our communities and the big vision are going to be at the business roundtable? They're going to be good people. They're going to be some of my friends. But are they going to really articulate what it should be articulated? Are they going to come up with the strategies and the plans that could have an impact not only for next week, not only for next month and next year, but for the next 10 or 15 years? And I would say no. I think the other thing that I thought we should talk about is, one time I was speaking at Harvard, and the young lady said, well, that's a great presentation, but I'm from LA and we're being gentrified out of our neighborhoods. That made me think. That's true. In Chicago, gentrification is occurring. We should not just let land be taken away from us, be in the south, north, urban areas. We should be part of the plan to make sure lands are being used, that we're part of the investment in these lands. Like if you talk about gentrification, I'm from Chicago. Anytime you see a police, shop being set up or a fire hydrant, established, gentrification is coming. It's just a matter of time. The plans are already laid out. We're not part of that. And I said, let's invest. Let's create our own pool, major pool, and look at that from a different perspective, from an economic perspective, and really protect the people who are being gentrified. So make sure that they have the jobs. The other things I said too is we really have to leverage our relationship with people all over the world. I strongly believe in the Black diaspora, the brown diaspora, the Asian diaspora. I lived in Africa twice. I saw the growth that was occurring. You alluded to in your presentation about the minerals and the vast resources in many of the countries of Africa. We're not working together to leverage those to really have an impact on people less fortunate than we are. And I think the last couple of things I think are so important is that we have to conduct research. The research that you just presented in the first half an hour, is the average person on the street doesn't understand that. They don't understand. So maybe we have to write it and present it in a way so they do understand it and we're part of it. And the last thing I said, and I know the history behind this, and once I said it once again at a Ivy League school, and they said, Larry, you can't say that. I said, why not? I said, we got to stop fighting each other like crabs in the barrel. That doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help, the communities. It doesn't help the individuals. And we have to work together, collaborate, and work with people of goodwill, irrespective of race, gender, orientation. We have to work together with all people of goodwill. And that's why I'm on this. And this is why when I said to you very clearly, I'm with you. Unfortunately, I couldn't be with you in San Francisco. But what you represent and what your dream is and what you're trying to do, I will be with you 100% for the rest of the time I have on this earth, because I think it is so important, especially in the tech area.
Mr. Lowry, I had one other question for you.
Sure.
We have a room here full of AI, robotics, innovators, investors. What message do you have for them, given how critical of a time this is for us to be included in all of this?
I think it's imperative that you should be included. I think you in an earlier conversation, you asked me, was this very similar to affirmative action? In a way, but I think as we think about it and reflect on it, affirmative action took place over time. We don't have that time now. Technology affects every business, regardless of size. It's going to affect every community, every company, be it small, large, or medium. And AI it's there. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. So the question you have to ask is, one, how can we be a part of designing a new evolution dealing with AI? So it helps, hopefully, in a very positive way, everyone. Two, how can we skill people to the extent that people say might be out of jobs? They don't have to be in the job. I think thirdly, we have to be able to deal with AI and deal with the experts who already anticipated maybe people of color might not be perceived and integrated in a way that would make a difference. They're out there. They're in universities. They're in tech companies. They're in consulting firms. They're all over. Do we know who those people are? And can we bring them in? I even deal with, somebody, from Venture said, Larry, how are you going to protect your intellectual properties? You realize how much intellectual property you have, not only in your book, but all the reports, and I never even thought about it. I never even thought about it. But when I started reflecting on it, I have written a lot, and people have tested, asking me questions, and I said, these are pretty good questions. They said, Larry, you wrote that. You wrote that when you did that. So I think that these are the questions, and I think before I, end, I just want you to know that what you're doing across this country, reaching out to communities, trying to find the best and the brightest, irrespective of race, is very noble. And I think that there are people in 10 or 15 different cities. And every time I start giving speeches and I start talking about my dream, my ultimate dream before I leave this place, is to maybe have 20 different billion-dollar companies in 20 different cities. And then if we did that and we created those firms, let's watch and see the impact that we have on our society and the world. That's my dream. And I will never retire. I will continue to work with you. I will continue to work with other people. I'll continue to shake up people in the federal government, Republican or Democrat. I will continue to say what I got to say.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lowry, for being with us, for inspiring us and echoing our message. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being on this journey with us. It's our first annual general meeting, as Quinn chaired. In the next few minutes, I'd love to walk you through how we got here and tell you about some of our founders who are truly diamonds. You're going to get to meet them today and hear from them. All right, well, Transform VC is a place where we believe in a future where technology drives both positive climate and social change. In a nutshell, we invest in AI with social and climate impact. We want to empower underrepresented entrepreneurs so that each of them could become a category queen and a category king with technology so that they could each impact $1 billion and make $1 billion. Our entrepreneurs, we have a special focus on entrepreneurs that are overlooked and dismissed, particularly female founders, Black founders, and Middle Eastern founders. They're all driven by a cause that is greater than themselves. These founders are generally underrepresented and overlooked and dismissed. There's a saying, if you watch the movie The Imitation Game, one of my favorites, those you imagine nothing of do the things that no one imagines. Well, at Transform VC, we're willing to spend that extra half hour or take that extra meeting when others are unwilling. In doing so, we've identified diamonds that you're going to get to meet today. Our goal is to invest and nurture 1,000 tech founders who each will impact $1 billion and make $1 billion. Easy to say, not so easy to accomplish, of course. But it takes a very deliberate strategy and very thoughtful one to getting us to this aspirational outcome. One, it's always been thought that to get impact, you got to sacrifice returns. Or to get returns, you got to sacrifice impact. Well, no. We believe we can generate outlier impact and outlier financial returns. This is where we play. This is where we win today. What do outliers have? They've got deep technology that consists of AI, complex engineering, maybe material sciences, basically something that is not easily replicable. Two, network effects, the most important concept since the internet was invented. Who's number 2 after Facebook? Who's number 2 after Airbnb? I don't know. I don't care. They were able to get that outlier outcome because of the network effects. And of course, that 10x advantage. If whatever founder is building is not 10 times better than anything else, customer will not leave what they have to come to founder. 10 times better, sometimes it's easy to quantify. Cheaper, faster, sometimes not so easy. We got to unpack that. And third, but certainly not least, is we want our entrepreneurs to think about impact not as an afterthought. Oftentimes, people wait till they're millionaires or billionaires and they start thinking about philanthropy and impact. Well, no. We encourage our founders to give us one impact measure, only one, that they can start tracking from day number 1. Even if it's 0 for a while or even a long while, it doesn't matter, so long as they're working with the intent to improve on that impact, on that one impact measure. And the truth of the matter is this formula is working. I'm pleased to tell you that we are consistently in the top 10%. Our Fund 0 is, in fact, the top 5%. Fund 1 and Fund 2 are in the top 10%. We think we're in the top probably 1 or 2%. We just don't have the data to support it. In fact, just 2 weeks ago, we had our first liquidity event in Fund 1. One of our investors generated a 17x gross return. After we got paid our carry, they generated 14x net on that portion that they sold. If you look at the entire capital that they put to work with us, they've essentially 1.8 exit or doubled it and maintained 88% of the future upside in 3 years. Thank you. Of course, Fund 2 is the one we're deploying out of today, and we're also raising for it. And it's already tripled in value. It's marked at 3.2x, which means any new partner that joins us until April 7th is going to enjoy this triple value at cost. On April 8th, we no longer extend this invitation. So like I said, this was a fabulous outcome that we had where the investor generated 14x net after us getting paid carry. This was our first liquidity event, certainly not the last. The really significant part about this is that by investing early in seed or pre-seed, we do not have to wait for an IPO. We do not have to wait for an acquisition. Oftentimes, late-stage investors come and they just want to gobble up the stock in these fantastic companies. So that's an opportunity like this one, where the investors sold 12% of their stake, doubled their entire capital, and maintained 88% of the future upside. So this is a fantastic opportunity to be coming into companies at the earlier stage. So let's go back. The idea of economic empowerment is not new. As you can see, my idea of impact has been economic empowerment. This has been on my mind for at least 16 years. But it wasn't until 2020 when I attended the Upfront Summit, and James Lowry, along with John Legend, who I didn't even know who he was, shows you how much of a nerd I am, and Kobe Fuller, they were on a panel, and James stands up and says, oh, I have the 10-point plan for the economic empowerment of blacks in America. And as he was talking, my jaw literally dropped. If I just substitute the word black for any other minority, this is exactly what any community or any minority group should be doing. I've been talking about this for, at that point, I guess, 13 years. People said I was crazy. Well, turns out I'm not crazy. Other people are talking and saying the same thing. And that's why I was so pleased that Jim Lowry agreed to join us today. You know, the number one of the 10-point plan is we have, you know, the communities must understand that those who control capital control the country. That's number one. The last of the 10, and by the way, we're giving away free copies of Jim's book. So if you're interested, please sign up with the ladies up front. The last is the community must get rid of the crabs in the barrel mentality. Think of a barrel and crabs inside. Someone's trying to climb up. His friend pulls him down so they can climb up. We got to get rid of this as a community. We got to support each other. So as you know, Rama joined me 3 years ago, first as an advisor. Then I managed to get her to part ways with her money. She became an investor. And then about a year ago, I persuaded her to join me full-time as a co-GP. So thank you, Rama, for joining me. Our interaction has been a source of a lot of fun, but also some pain. One thing's for sure is I feel much, much wiser today than I did a year ago. I see our relationship as Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock. Rama is resemblance. That's right. That's right. So gender aside, of course, Rama is very quiet. She's also very smart. Most importantly, she is very strong, just like Mr. Spock. This is we work together in so much harmony. So we're like the yin and yang. We have just different way of talking. As you can see, she talks slow and soft. I talk fast and loud. We have different way of thinking. We put together an inclusive culture and inclusive even communication. So we no longer say you should. We invite someone to do something. I learned a lot myself. I used to always address a room like this with, hey guys. Well, it turns out that's wrong. A lot of ladies in the room, we should be saying, hey team, or hey all, or folks. And in fact, the team composition reflects the entrepreneurs we're going after. So I'm pleased to tell you that Transform VC went from being 100% male to 40% female. And like I said, we reflect the founders we want to go after. We had a heated debate about a month ago in a company that does a long-acting contraceptive for men. And as you can imagine, most of the men in the team were completely against it. But because we had female team members, we were able to understand the viewpoint. And we're probably going to be investing. That'll probably be our 8th investment in Fund 2. We have built an institutional infrastructure, largely thanks to Rama. Everyone in purple, I guess, started with us over a year, and we've been having rotational programs with fellows and interns. And our institutional infrastructure expands. It's given me so much time. Before we evaluate any opportunity, we look at team, market and impact, defensibility, score each of those 1 to 5 and add it up. If we get 12 or more, we continue the diligence. If it's less, then we pass or we track. It's given me so much time that I've had the ability to go and spend more time networking with LPs, with VCs, and extend these relationships to our founders. I managed to make it up all the way to Hawk Hill with a group of VCs who care about deep tech and climate. I was the last to make it to the top, but I made it. So this is a long-winded way to say if you like the cycle but you're not super fit, please contact me. But it also allowed us to start impactabillion.com, which is an initiative and a roadshow. We believe Silicon Valley is the best place in the world to build a startup, but it's really quite insular. So we're taking Silicon Valley in a roadshow to the inner cities of America, identify overlooked, dismissed talent, help that talent crack the Silicon Valley code in weeks instead of years on their own. In fact, we've already visited 6 cities. We're going to hit 12 more in the next 12 months. And building relationships with communities, underrepresented communities, research institutions, again, to identify these diamonds. And I'm pleased to tell you that we've made 2 investments as a result of the Impact Billion. You're going to get to meet one of those founders today. Kerwin Rent with Elite Gaming Live. Pleased to have you with us. So once again, our goal is to invest and nurture in 1,000 tech founders who each will impact $1 billion and make $1 billion. Before I moved to California, I wrote a letter to my family saying why I left everything behind and I came here, and it was exactly this goal. And we're not there yet, but we are 1 step closer. Thank you so much for joining us, and we're going to move on to the next part of the program. So Vectara is both actually a Fund 1 and a Fund 2 company. And it's the trusted generative AI platform for all builders and the trusted GenAI for business apps. Thanks, Am, for having us. I'm just going to tell you a very interesting story about Am. So Am came to school in Stanford to study. And while he was studying, he sold the company for $9 million. He calls his dad, "Dad, I just became a millionaire. I have no investors, sold the company for $9 million. What do you think his dad said?" He's like, "Did you finish your PhD?" He's like, "Not yet." He's like, "Call me back when you're done."
It's a true story.
And of course, following that, he ended up founding Cloudera, which sold for $5 billion. And now he left all that behind him because he's doing something even grander. That's Vectara. So, Amr, when you first started Vectara, what sort of impact were you trying to effect?
Yeah, I have a question first for the audience. Show of hands, how many of you saw the movie The Matrix? Okay, this is my crowd. So I think about 90% of the room raised their hand. But one of my favorite lines in that movie is when Neo was learning to fight Kung Fu. And simply the Kung Fu program came into his head and he just said, "I now know Kung Fu." And the same thing happened again with Trinity. Trinity is the lead actress in that movie where she wanted to fly a helicopter. And the helicopter program came into her brain, and now she can fly a helicopter. So essentially, a normal human becomes a superhuman. They're able to do anything very quickly, learn to do that new thing. And this is really the journey we're on. The ChatGPT and OpenAI opened our eyes, all of us, to the potential of that, is now we can have the software sitting by our side that can help us with everything that we do and answer any question that we have about the thing that we're trying to do. And what we're trying to do at Vectara is enable that for business To enable that within a business concept, you have to solve some key problems in this technology. One of them is called hallucination. Show of hands, how many of you heard about hallucination? And I mean in the context of large language models, not in the context of California and Amsterdam, and you know what I'm hinting at right now. These large language models can sometimes make up stuff. They tell you how to fly the helicopter, and then they insert a couple of things that are not true that might crash the helicopter. Of course, that's not acceptable in a business in a business construct, and we solve that problem. So that's our vision. Is we see a world in the future where there will be Google Assistants and Alexas everywhere. Every single app you have, every single device you have, will have the smart thingy that will help you to use it way better. So this example we have here in this slide is actually one of our customers, a company called SonoSim. And SonoSim does this using our technology for ultrasound operators, for radiologists that operate an ultrasound machine. How you aim the gun when you're scanning the heart versus scanning the lungs versus scanning for pregnancy versus scanning a muscle is different. And how you calibrate the machine is also different. Now they have this smart assistant with them. They just ask it, what should I do in this case? And it tells them, like, you should recalibrate to these settings and you should aim in that. Oh, I'm facing this problem. What should I do now? And it tells them, you should do this now. So the average or even below average radiologist becomes an expert radiologist, just in the same way that all of us did not know how to navigate, to drive from point A to point B, yet now with Google Maps, we can go anywhere. That's exactly the trajectory that we're on, to do that for everything.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. What has Vectara accomplished in the last year?
We have a couple of key accomplishments I'm proud of. The first and foremost is the team. We have an amazing team that we built this year. This is our launch year. We started the year with just 3 people, myself and my co-founders. We now have 30 people in the company, all of them super smart. One of them is Bader right there sitting in the audience. He leads our ecosystem partnerships for the company. We raised a seed round of funding that Transform participated in of $28.5 million, which is very respectable for a seed round in a company. We started the year with just 100 users signed up to use our platform, and we now just crossed 11,000 developers leveraging our platform.
That's incredible. Well, what do you think is happening in the next 12 months in Vectara?
So this year for us was very focused on one of the key stages in any company building a product, which is the product market fit, right? Is the truth you have a product that is built in a way that companies like SonoSim is able to use easily to solve a problem they care about. And this is our focus this year was entirely around that. Can we prove that? And can we prove repeatability of it? Meaning we're able to sell it in the same way over and over again. And we're almost there. We almost have that proof. Once we nail that proof and we know exactly how to sell that product, which I expect will happen within the next 3 months, then now we switch into scaling mode where now it's about selling that over and over again in many, many places across the world. So we're hoping that will be the main goal of next year, is in the middle of the year, we'll detect, wow, now we prove this, we have this, let's press the gas and start scaling this across the world.
Wonderful. We can take some questions from the audience if there are any questions.
It's not so much a question, but a comment. And congratulations, because AI failed 30 to 40 years ago because it came in with arrogance of the general problem solver, GPS, something that could solve anything. 30 years later, it's come back replacing one letter. GPS became GPT, right? And the arrogance that you do not need domain knowledge, but you could just wing it, caused failure 30 years ago. And thank God you're doing it right by having the transformers learn from domain knowledge per se.
Thank you. That's very correct. Thank you for that observation. Yes.
All right, we have one more question.
Amer, thank you for this presentation. What was the reason for you to select this particular healthcare vertical as your first?
The healthcare is something we all understand and care about. I could have picked law. We have customers in legal using us. I could have picked finance. We have many investors using us to make investment decisions. Manufacturing. We have many that use us to troubleshoot machines and find problems in them. Customer support. There's many other verticals. But I thought with this focus on impact, what else than something we all care about is how can we live longer and improve our health. So that's why I picked this one. And I really see this technology enabling many of us to be as good as doctors for diagnosis, which is a big problem we have in many countries in the world where people just call up their aunt. Hey, aunt, I have a headache and I have this temperature. What medicine should I take? And their aunt tells them and actually go buy, and that happens in Egypt a lot, which is a big problem in my opinion. So now we're going to have these smart assistants with us that are they're going to be better than the average doctor, definitely better than the aunt, but definitely better than the average doctor. And that's why I think from an impact point of view, this is very significant.
We have a question in the back there.
What you are accomplishing is incredible and remarkable. Congratulations to you and the whole team. What do you see as the biggest risk, right? Like you started your speech with the Matrix. I mean, there's like a lot of, I think sci-fi level concern with that, but like from a realistic perspective, what do you think the biggest risk is from giving everyone a smart device like this in their pocket?
That opens up a bigger question, which is what's the risk of AI in general? And the risk of new technologies in general, like AI, is if there will be unfortunately humans that will abuse it, that will use it in the wrong way, right? Like cars are meant to go from point A to point B. Cars are not meant to drive them and run other people over with. Yet we still have 40,000 people dying every year from cars. So are we going to be able to adapt to that and recognize that technology brings both good and bad? And we need to be able to extract as much of the good as we can. So I'll give you another very interesting example from here in San Francisco. One of the autonomous driving companies that we're operating here is Cruise. And Cruise, they're building very smart AI cars. They're way more safer than humans are. They just had one accident where they just killed one person by mistake, and now they were banned completely from going forward. I think that's a negative because we kill 40,000 people per year driving cars. This is how much we humans kill. So if AI can drive the cars in our place and only kill 5,000, I know it sounds bad, but that's way better than the 40,000. So that's kind of the issue that I see is we'll struggle a bit with the value that technology brings compared to what we are doing as humans.
Well, we have a few questions. One in the back over there, please.
I know this might not be your domain, but when do you think your AI will put VCs out of a job and or make us not top quartile, top decile VCs better?
That's an excellent question. So first, one of our key use cases, and actually we have many investors already using our platform, they ingest the PowerPoint decks they're getting from the entrepreneurs. They put into it the investment memos that they write for why they're going to invest versus not, the analyst reports from JP Morgan and others, and now it helps them write the new investment memo. It helps them make the decision much quicker. It helps them be a lot more efficient, hence the term efficiency I have on my shirt here. But a big part of the VC's job is not that. It's actually the people part of raising money from LPs and convincing entrepreneurs why they should be work with them versus somebody else. And I think that's not something technology will replace anytime soon. So we still need them for that, unfortunately.
Okay, so I have a quick question here. So I'm an adjunct professor at Carnegie Mellon. I teach applied AI. So in our field, one of the challenges, particularly for healthcare, is high quality data for training. So I want to see that how do you get those information, particularly for giving the concerns data privacy. And the second thing is for this particular use cases, you need a high accuracy, as you mentioned, right? So for particularly diagnosis and treatment, that you want to have high accuracy, but the more anything about 90 or 95% become incredibly more difficult to, more resources to pursue the high accuracy. So how do you determine what is the right amount of accuracy that is acceptable, and how do you pursue that? Thank you.
These are very involved questions that would take a much longer time to answer. So I'll give the brief answer now, and I'm happy to connect later on for a more detailed discussion. But on the accuracy front, my belief is we just need to beat the humans. We need to beat the average humans. If we can beat the average humans by 100%, then that's great. We cannot be perfect. But the nice thing about AI is when it makes that mistake, when it makes that inaccurate mistake, and we tell it, don't make this mistake again, it will never make it again. But humans, you tell them, don't make this mistake again, and they still do it again, right? So I see a lot of hope, like, yes, initially it might not be 100% perfect accuracy-wise, but will improve over time. The other key issue is hallucination, and one of the key things that we built at our company and we released to the open source. It was actually covered in the New York Times 2 weeks ago. We were on the front page of the New York Times because of this, is a model that's called the Hughes Hallucination Evaluation Framework, which measures the accuracy of how these models make conclusions as a function of the facts they're coming in. And then last but not least, on your privacy question, our model of operation is we work with a given company with their own data for them. Right, so the output of our engine is grounded in the data of that company, and the responses are only given back to them. So when you have that kind of approach, then you mitigate a lot of the concerns around the privacy. Versus for consumers, it's a much harder problem. I agree with that.
Yes, so I'd like to hear a bit about your company's approach to impact. And how do you think about it? Is it just in terms of the theme of medicine in general? Is it implicit, or is there some explicit approach attached to your company?
Yeah, so impact happens in many shapes, ways, and forms. Our form of impact in this stage that we're at right now is to create technologies that help everybody become a lot more efficient in terms of what they do. Right? So if that's a doctor, they can make decisions way faster. If that's a mechanic trying to troubleshoot a machine, they can troubleshoot it way faster. If that's a lawyer trying to finish a contract, they can finish it way faster. If it's a marketer trying to create a blog post, they can create it way faster. That's our focus, it's efficiency. We think we can make all of us 100 times more efficient leveraging technology than this. All of us can know Kung Fu and go beyond that. Now, later on, of course, because we're still in the product market fit stage of our company, we just got our seed round of funding this year in April. Later on, when we're more profitable, then of course we want to give back as well. We want to impact in that way, in allocating part of our revenues as an organization, going back to key efforts that we care about. But it's too early for us to focus on that. Right now, we want to focus on creating a great technology that impacts a billion and makes a billion.
Thank you, Am. Really pleasure to have you, and front page of the New York Times. Let's end at that. Thank you.
So Kerwin set up Elite Gaming Live. I'll let him tell you a little bit more about the company. It's our first investment in a Black founder. We can't be more proud or very happy to have you with us, and especially because of the great impact that your business has. So Elite Gaming Live, in a sentence, blends esports with education. I want to start with asking you, please tell us, what problem were you trying to solve?
Yeah, sure. So Kerwin Rent, CEO and founder of Elite Gaming Live. My background's I was a traditional athlete through high school. I'm from a district in the U.S. that was extremely competitive. My coach told me pretty quickly my freshman year, hey, you're pretty good, but we've got somebody coming in that's about 5 inches taller than you. So don't put all of your eggs in this basket. That was while I was on the team. So, the whole time I was also the type of student who I was tinkering with PCs. I was collecting action figures. I was a big Pokemon card collector. So I had two different groups of friends. And, as I grew up into young adulthood, I just truly saw how the impact or the support I had from my community, my school, my parents, how that built me up to be a highly confident individual and kind of believe I can achieve practically anything was something that was absolutely missing from my entire group of friends who were on this other side of my life. So I go into college and I'm just seeing the impacts of these really smart kids not having the confidence or self-esteem to even believe they can go achieve. And I'm thinking to myself, man, these kids are probably a lot smarter than me. But my ambitions are bigger, my dreams are bigger than theirs, right? So I started Elite Gaming Live because I wanted gamers and kids who are on that side of kind of the social situation in K through 12 to feel like I felt when I played traditional sports, because how you feel really drives, I think, everything, not knowledge and intelligence. I mean, truly how you feel can take you so much further than kind of, what you kind of have. So yeah, that's why I started EGL. I wanted gamers to feel like I felt when I played traditional sports. I wanted them to be supported by their parents intentionally, right? How can you support a kid who loves to play video games if they don't go to practice if they don't ever have any of these events that a parent can like latch themselves to and say, hey, I'm here for you. I'm so glad you're doing this and I support you, right? So gamers really never had that. And I wanted to build a structure and a league that allowed adults to kind of participate in this thing that kids love.
Fantastic, thank you. Now, you've been doing this for a while, and you just recently started fundraising.
Right.
Why'd you wait that long?
Oh, this is interesting. So I'm from Indianapolis, and I don't know if anybody knows the investment ecosystem in Indianapolis about 10 years ago, but I mean, I didn't even know this world existed. So I was actually an operator. I had an idea.
Which world? Well, you didn't know which world existed.
Venture, angel. I didn't know I could use other people's money to do something that I wanted to do, right? So my background's in technology. I've been a desktop engineer, network engineer for a number of Fortune 500 companies. And so what I was doing was going to schools that I was familiar with, and I was pouring my own dollars into my business and growing a good business, right? Then I moved to Washington, D.C., and as an operator, a few key people kind of pulled my head up and said, whoa, you're doing something that could be massive, and you need to stop using your own money to build it. You can't build it fast enough. And so those individuals just kind of really lifted my head up and opened my eyes, and fast forward to now, and yeah, that's kind of how it happened.
Oh, we're happy to have you in our corner. So how many students have you helped so far or engaged in your programs?
Yeah, I would say up to now, we probably have a total of around 15 to 16,000. And I would say the bulk of those... Thank you. Thank you. I would say the bulk of those students probably came in the last 2 to 2.5 years after I kind of entered into this world of fast growth. So
wonderful. And tell us a little bit about last year. What was it like for you? What are some of the major accomplishments that you've had?
So 2023 has been our best year ever. We closed some of the largest school districts in the country, some of the biggest, some of the most impactful from a demographic perspective. The large customers that we had prior to those all renewed this year, and they kind of recommitted at larger amounts to what we were doing, which is fantastic. And we also launched a new product that not only that focuses more on the learning experience coupled with the competitive gaming.
Fantastic. And looking forward, what do you have in store for us for next year or beyond?
Yeah, so looking forward, I'll say this year too, we last 12 months, we crossed 2 million in revenue, which is fantastic. I would say this year, we're definitely going to 5 times that. We're going to cross 20,000 students on the platform. I want to also say we're a private league. So, we're not B2C, we're B2B. So we're kind of navigating, schools and school districts, and we're picking those up as we sell. But I would say this coming year, we're definitely going to continue to scale. We're excited about that. We're gonna add AI to our learning experience, which is going to respect kids where they're at all the way across the spectrum. I always think about this picture of the tree and all the animals at the bottom of the tree, and education is the tree. And it's like, okay, well, there's different types of animals that can't climb this tree, right? There's kids who have different home situations. They really go into school in so many different places, and they come into a classroom and they're learning. They're supposed to be learning the same way. So I think AI is going to be the thing that starts to respect where kids are at by looking at where they've been and kind of knowing them a lot better than, an individual teacher can. So we're going to be launching that infusion into our product later on in 2024. And so I'm super excited about that too. So
fantastic. Thank you. So maybe tell us something about this journey with the VC world that either felt inspiring or a little bit challenging and you'd like to change it for others.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'll talk about you guys' process first. You guys were very unique. I mean, I've probably interfaced with, I would say, 30 to 40 venture groups probably over the last 2 years in different capacities. And there's been just a few groups that stood out on process and on how you guys kind of, dig into the founder and the business. I mean, from the very first call, you guys were straight shooters. You guys asked questions that most other groups probably wouldn't ask. And I think that really built a strong bond and relationship between EGL and you guys. So I would say that was notable. Definitely challenges. I'd say VC is a industry where, or a kind of a mechanism where you definitely want to see more inclusivity, more access. But I love, again, the work that you all are doing. You guys are actually intentionally going out to find the founders like me who I would have never known this world existed. I was just head down building a business. So if folks like you are going out to intentionally find us, that's a big step forward from where, where this industry was before. So yeah, I think that venture is tough. It's built for a certain type of person, and I think Elite Game Alive is equipping kids who are super smart, who build solutions for all of us every day. We're giving them the confidence and self-esteem to actually reach their potential, because there's so much out there. There's so many problems that we have as a world and society. And I think that some of the smartest kids in the world are just kind of have their shoulders drooped, their heads down, and they're never going to enter into solving big problems because they may not think they can. So,
Kerwin, I have a question. So you also help with more tactical things, not only students reaching their potential, but even academic performance and attendance. How is it that they're able to help with attendance?
So it's just like sports. I didn't get any minutes on the basketball team if I didn't maintain a certain grade point average. Now, if you look at the population of a school, let's say there's 1,000 kids in a school, there's only so many kids who have the athletic ability to ever try out for that team. There's like maybe 2% of the school or less will ever try to make the tennis team, the football team. I mean, it's God-given stuff that you got to have nowadays, right? Kids are playing sports at 6 months old. So now you have kids who need to be motivated in a different way. And it just so happens that over 80% of kids play video games. So you have this huge student population, and, we used to get our Game Boys confiscated over and over and over again. If you just saw the Game Boy hanging out of my pocket, come here, give me that. Now it's a different world. These kids are playing games so much. If you can just tweak that, if you can pivot that interest into careers and opportunities that are really gainful for them, imagine what you're unlocking for all those kids. So we attach academic standards to Elite Game Alive, behavioral standards if schools need them. We look at ourselves as a tool to say, hey, we're going to get kids engaged continuously at a large scale, and you as a school can do whatever you need to do with that engagement. And if anyone is familiar, engagement is the biggest problem in education in the U.S. right now. Kids don't even want to go to school. So imagine just not even wanting to be there. How are you going to perform in the classroom? How are you going to perform throughout school culture? It all just kind of trickulates down. So,
right. Thank you.
Great.
Do we have any questions from the audience?
Quite intriguing. So it's who's your customers? Is it the school districts? Is it the colleges or gaming companies?
Customers are schools, and they could come in the form of like a single site. They could come in the form of a district. Like we have relationships that give us 20 schools at a time, 30 schools at a time. We also work with Boys and Girls Clubs. We work with YMCAs, and what you find out is that a lot of these organizations work in big pockets. So if you can kind of prove out what you're doing to a number of single sites, they're starving for these type of programs that just get kids to want to show up. So if you can just prove it out on a few, you land and then you expand. And that's exactly what we've been doing over the past 12 to 18 months. It's just landing in a city, showing what we can do, and then it just starts to unlock for us.
So the major motivation is for the students to be engaged, right? This is how you measure for success.
That's the foundational measurement, is how many kids are showing up, how are they continuously showing up, and then you build other layers of impact on top of that, where we provide tools for schools to say, this is how you can track how they're using our learning management system. I mean, we have a whole STEM LMS on our platform that's tied directly to the competition, where we're teaching kids what these careers are, what education skills they need to pursue them, and what they can look forward to if they became a professional.
Sorry, just one follow-up. Do you measure crime rate in that region?
We do not currently measure crime rate in the region, no.
Okay. It's the impact, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is outstanding what you're doing.
Thank you.
If that goes back to the community, this is a metrics you can actually present.
Yep.
Right?
Agreed. I totally agree.
Thank you.
Please, in the middle. Yeah.
How do you guarantee sustainability from the founder? You know, you have this vision and you're doing it. If you're not around to sustain it, you don't have the team around you to sustain it. How does it grow beyond you?
That's a great question. And so I'll just say first, I'm 14 years in, so I'm committed. But what I'll say is, you know, when gaming and esports is at a really critical point right now. And it can go one way or it can go the other. One way is let's take as much as we can from gamers. Let's take as much of their time and their attention as much without giving them something gainful back. Or you can go this direction and say, here, look at tens of millions of kids who cannot get enough of this thing right here. Yes, we can eke out, like, you know, profit from that or that sort of thing, but these are kids and we all have to live here. So either we're going to take from them or we're going to give them something valuable, because they're going to all have to take, those kids are going to grow up to have to take care of all of us eventually, right? So, I mean, the best I can do as a founder now is to be present and be here and to build this as quickly and as effectively as I can, build a team that believes in the same things that I believe in. And as we go to schools, we're sharing that belief with them, right? We're showing them what they can do with this. Even if we go away, hey, you guys can go buy a PlayStation, and this is what you can do with that machine in this building. And so we share all that type of kind of insight and you know, slight nudges towards educators to say, don't be afraid of this thing. This is where kids are at. You got to get comfortable with this thing right here and figure out what to do with it. So
We have one more question there in the back, please.
This is super awesome. Thanks for sharing. Given you were talking about growth, and obviously you've been doing this for 14 years, I'm kind of curious if you've explored international markets and how the receptivity has been for this model abroad.
So a great question. So we've definitely gotten inquiries from Canada, from the UK, from Africa, and you know, we'd love to expand internationally. I think that's definitely in our future. I would say within the next 18 to 24 months is to kind of pick one or two geographies that make a lot of sense, and because the same thing is happening when it comes to kids and their relationship with video games. The same thing is happening in all other parts of the developed world, right? So it's definitely a big prospect, and excited to go out.
Right.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. And I know you're going to run around to other VC meetings, but we would love to have you back with us for dinner, and you can have a conversation with everyone here.
Thank you so much.
Right, I'd love to invite Mohamed Amer, the co-founder of Claryo, a TVC Fund 2 company. Claryo is bridging AI's reliability gap. All right, so thank you so much for being with us. My first question, like for all of our other founders, is what problem are you trying to solve?
It's kind of an ambitious problem. It starts at safety, and it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek AI plus impact equals safety, because everyone sees AI as unsafe or difficult to deploy and has a lot of risk, a lot of issues, but there's a lot of potential. And to unlock this potential safely, we really need to treat it as a first-class citizen. So kind of rewinding back, my first robot that I built was very unsafe. The best way to deploy it is behind a cage. And actually, if you look at a lot of manufacturing facilities, there is a lot of robots behind cages. So in the past 10 years, something different happened. There is a concept of collaborative robots. Robots that can operate around people, whether it's a collaborative arm or a mobile base or an autonomous forklift. And now that robots are operating around people, you need to be more careful. You need to figure out what it is that those robots are capable of, be able to understand their limitations, understand their risks, but also empower the workers that are in that space. So if you think of a robot, it's a kind of an enhanced power tool. It's like a drill in the tools in a warehouse, for example. So a warehouse robot is helping workers not carry heavy loads for long distances. You can literally dispatch a robot to a location, load it up, and dispatch it to another location. You could have robots, robotic arm moving, palletizing or depalletizing pallets in a warehouse. So now that robots are getting closer to people, there are injuries. And an example I shared with you, Rama, at the very beginning, which is Amazon actually had a big safety crisis in warehouses with robotics that they actually hit. There is a big report on that with analysis which warehouses have robotics automation, which didn't have. And then more recently, Amazon released a new robot that's much safer. But then when it comes down is the workers who are actually not particularly the empowered people in a warehouse or supply chain setup. They're the ones who are going to pay a price of an injury, and then they're under contractors' agreement. They are the easy ones to kind of settle and get rid of if the problem emerges. So what we want to do with Claryo is, and what we're actually doing, is pretty much making it easy to deploy robots safely and also to measure their risks and be able to mitigate those risks in a timely fashion in a way that can actually keep the uptime of robots high and keep them being useful, but also allows people to feel safe around them and actually operate to the maximum potential.
Thank you for giving that overview. And just to put things in perspective, that report that you were mentioning said that there were 38,000 injuries in that 1 year for Amazon in their warehouses. So these are 38,000 men and women from relatively low economic background that are on the receiving end of these injuries, right? So you're bringing in the software that's going to hopefully prevent the injuries that are causing people to get out of the job or not have, the whatever little that they're usually paid in those conditions, right?
Well, it's actually multiple layers of impact for us. So one is the first order is for robotics companies first, which is actually making it easier for them to deploy robots than for integrators or robotics as a service companies. The second level is actually the application engineers in charge of the deployment become more empowered with tools that are AI assisted and very, very powerful, and makes it easy for them to deploy because there are no code tools. So it doesn't require a high skill person like a machine learning engineer to deploy. No, not anymore. You can have an applications engineer that can actually deploy much faster. Then third order there becomes, once you arrive at the warehouse and you deploy, now you can actually measure the risk. You can figure out robots, are they in compliance? Are the robots behaving or supposed to behave in that environment? Is it the fault of the warehouse operator that they did something in the warehouse that made the robots fail? And if we identify that quickly, we can now fix it, mitigate it, so it's less likely to have injuries. Figure out areas of congestions, understand where most injuries happen and try to resolve for that. So in a way, we set up a lot of alerts and a lot of metrics to enable a warehouse operator to minimize risk, to maximize potential, and to have robots safely in their warehouse.
And we're talking about warehouses all over the world in any industry.
Correct. So right now our focus is logistics and fulfillment warehouses. That's because there is a lot of growth in that sector, and especially the holidays now. This is peak time. So if you think about it, a lot of the robot, in the context of robotics as a service, you literally hire the robots as a shift worker. So you're not buying robots and installing them. You're actually bringing robots into warehouses and saying, okay, well, November, December, there is a big volume of orders coming in. We want 100 robots to augment our workforce. And then in January, maybe it's 10 robots because the volume is much lower. So with that kind of model, it's an operational expense. So for a 3PL, like a DHL, FedEx, an operator, for them, they want to be able to scale up and down workers and scale up and down robots. And at the same time, when you scale up and down robots and scale up and down workers, the work situation becomes very dynamic and changing. Those warehouses are not structured as an assembly line of which robots will just do a specific task over and over. No, like robots will have to navigate with sensors, with machine learning, with computer vision to actually navigate about pallets that are there today, not there tomorrow. So by using machine learning and deep learning, particularly in this kind of context, you want to make sure that the performance is at a certain level, that when you detect objects, they have to be at a certain level. If you detect people, you have to be more certain because people are not objects. They're moving around. They have velocities. They have dynamics. And if you're going to treat them as a table or a chair that doesn't move, you're probably going to bump into them.
Yeah. That's a great overview. Thank you so much. Now, you've only gone out of stealth mode recently. So what has last year been like for you?
Kind of still in stealth. We're tearing out our coming out of stealth. But Yeah, we closed our funding in December 2022, so kind of year to date versus 12 months, really. So the past 12 months, we finished the funding round, we closed the round and hired the core team and really built our first iteration of the product and deployed it. We have about 12 robots going through our system right now. And we're trying now to position ourselves between robotics companies and their customers, rather than having the focus be robotics companies. Because actually, if we become more affiliated with the environment and the deployment and the customers of robotics companies, we become gatekeepers, and we become actually able to have more impact on any robotics company coming in to operate. We'd be able to evaluate them first. We'd be able to understand their risks and their abilities first, and then manage the deployments. And especially if there are multiple types of robotics vendor in a warehouse, that's when more issues become real, because each robotics company is not factoring in what other robots are doing in the environment. They're just focused on their own robots. So actually, I'm going to catch a flight at 6 p.m. to meet with an integrator, which has exactly that kind of problem of multi-robot vendors. So our focus is now on robotics companies, integrators, and as we progress, we actually go into the operators side as well and try to have Claryo be a first-class citizen in their warehouses and be more like a utility, like you have water, electricity, and you have Claryo to be able to deploy robots and deploy them safely as well.
Is this what you wanted to be when you grow up?
To be an astronaut, but that was a long shot.
Pretty close. It's very much like it. Well, that's fantastic. So tell us what's in store ahead. What does next year look like for you?
So we have kind of few key hires that we're actually talking with right now. Raed knows too much already. There's nothing in stealth from Raed. Raed knows more than some of the employees of the company, actually. But definitely a few key hires coming in, and we're expanding our kind of reach to talking to operators. So the next step for us is to actually talk with operators, and at this point, we'll have robotics companies, integrators, and operators, and really arrive at the PMF that bridges the three of them. So that's kind of our goal for the next 12 months, coming out of stealth, officially coming out of stealth rather than landing page. We have a cool website that's actually built, but we're not releasing that yet until we lock in the right customers and come out with a press release of everything we're doing properly.
Fantastic. Well, we wish you the best success.
I'd love to just say something before we take some questions. So I'll tell you how I met Mohamed in the first place. I was just browsing LinkedIn like probably most of us. So I read a very detailed description of the autonomous car company Cruise. Someone has ridden the car and provided a detailed record of every single thing that happened with feedback for improvement and so forth. And it was really, really interesting piece. And at the end of the piece, it said Mohamed Amer. I'm like, oh, the actor? So that's the first question that came to mind. And so I'm like, oh, I've been wanting to meet him forever. So let's reach out. And literally, I sent a LinkedIn message, and sure enough, he responded. And that's how this entire relationship began. And I think a week later, you were over, and we had a conversation. And a few months later, we were privileged to be an investor with you. So thank you for having us with you on this journey.
Yeah, thank you, Raed, for reaching out. And Raed was really at the beginning of the trails of fundraising, and he caught me. We just incorporated the company and about to go fundraising. And Raed really been supportive in the whole fundraising trail, and really a good person to have on our side, an investor to have on our side throughout the journey. And I don't see it any other way.
Thank you.
Hi, how are you, fellow founders? So I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I'm really curious. So in a previous lifetime, I actually worked in manufacturing in Arkansas, right? Union Free State, really population. I'm really curious how about your strategy to address the human side of it, because I worked with these people. I went on the floor, I wear the steel-toe shoes, and the thing is, like, fear is there, period. Anytime you have technology, data, whatever, and more than ever, the statement of, is AI going to replace us, is relevant in your industry, even though I believe that's the biggest industry to disrupt with AI. So I would love to hear from you just that side of it.
How long ago was your job as a manufacturing? What kind of manufacturing? Just some
car wheel manufacturing. So we manufactured wheels for GM cars, pretty much. So it was a lifetime ago. That's why I said about 10 years ago. But I still have a lot of civil engineering friends, mechanical engineering friends who work in the industry. So I follow it closely. But I'm really curious to hear your perspective.
Yeah. So definitely, great question. there are two components, like there's a flexible automation and there's fixed automation. And when I see manufacturing, I see it a part of the fixed automation component. There is a bit of flexible automation around the manufacturing facility, whether it's material handling, robots bringing stuff closer to an assembly line with other bigger robots behind cages and so on, right? So in the context of fixed manufacturing, our value add is actually less than a flexible manufacturing or flexible automation in this context. So imagine a world where conveyor belts are replaced with autonomous mobile robots. And I think we're entering that world right now. And that's what we're finding out with talking with integrators, is particularly that you have more flexibility in a facility. Imagine a world of which you can actually have a facility reconfigure based on the items you're actually manufacturing, rather than thinking of it as an assembly line with fixed conveyor belts. Let's get rid of the conveyor belts and actually have mobile robots move stuff around, have a collaborative arm picking and placing and modifying the piece that is actually on the assembly line, which is now our robotics. They call it literally virtual conveyor belt because it doesn't exist, but you have a bunch of robots moving things around. And then you have the third concept, which is kind of micro-location, like being able to actually have the collaborative arms working on a piece of hardware while it's actually moving on top of a mobile base. So now manufacturing is actually shifting to a different model. I'm not saying that the fixed automation is going to go away. It's just particular for certain industries, but flexible automation is becoming a more real thing. And with having flexible automation in context, you have people operating really closely to those robots. So the focus at Claryo is particularly, we actually map the environment. We first start by creating a virtual facility using generative AI. And then using that facility, we can actually plan the operation first. With any robotics vendors that are supported through Claryo, they can actually plan the operation in it. And then think of it as simulation in the loop, but then the next step becomes hardware in the loop. So once the robots are deployed, we do deployment management, we do monitoring, logging, tracking issues, and actually solving those issues along the way. So long answer to your question is flexible automation is where we kind of focus mostly. Yeah.
Thank you. What's really cool is that in a really short period of time, it's obvious that you've been able to convey that you understand the problem so deeply. So it's really cool. We've all seen the videos of Boston Scientific and the dog robots. And so what would you say Claryo's sort of novel thing is around being able to manage risk
Absolutely.
versus others?
So fun fact, Boston Dynamic has 3-4 robots. Each of them is using a different robotic stack. It's not the same stack on all the robots. It's one thing to note. When you're deploying a robot of that form factor into an environment, this is the first time the robot actually sees the environment. So the usual process is someone literally takes a joystick, follows the robots with a joystick to create a map of that environment from the robot's eyes. This map is fixed and stored and distributed on all other robots that are the same form factor in that facility, in that environment. So instead of that framework, we are actually making a big paradigm shift. We're actually mapping the environment first. So for us, we have 3 capture devices that can be used, and those maps are used across all robots, not only one type of robot. So one form, actually, we can map after this talk, if you want, we can map with my phone, this space here. And half an hour, we'll have a replica of this space, true photorealistic, physically realistic replica of it. If it's a larger space, 10,000 to 50,000 square foot, there is a handheld mapping device with sensor array on it. If it's larger than 50,000, we have actually a military-grade drone with a 60 megapixel and solid state LiDAR that can actually fly around and actually map the environment. So once we have that map, we ingest it into the Claryo platform and it becomes a part of a simulation. So now you're bringing the robots and actually testing them in simulation to make sure that they're arriving at certain metrics before you deploy them, rather than trying everything first time at the customer's facility and hoping for the best and mitigating things on the fly. So now you have an opportunity to fix and mitigate all of that. Our monitoring and logging is logging every detail of that robot in simulation first and in reality afterwards. So by logging all the telemetrics coming from the robots, all the sensory data coming from the robot, when an issue happens, you have a full replay of what it is that's actually happened. And now you can debug and mitigate that, and you cannot kind of deploy that software again until you actually resolve those issues. So we have versioning, we have issue tracking, but issue tracking is not just a Jira issue tracker. It's actually a very vertically integrated for robotics issue tracker, of which you can actually explore the data. It's very high dimensional data. Each robot generates at least 50 gigs per hour. So now it's a very different problem. And what happens is that because it's so complex, data ends up collecting dust on the cloud. We're operationalizing all of this data. We're able to mitigate issues, figure out alerts, analyze data to show you those are areas of potential risk. Those are areas you need to focus on. And then the last step for us is compliance and insurance. So now that we get to a point of which we're measuring the performance of the robots, understanding exactly what they're doing in the warehouse in simulations and they load up in the real world, we measure their performance. We measure their risk. For the performance, it's SLAs and billing for the customers. For the risk, it's insurance and liability for the insurer to actually be able to write a policy for them.
Thank you so much, Mohamed. We really appreciate you being with us. And safe trip. Now let's take care.
To be my strongest means not necessarily lifting the most weights, but for me, it's all about being strongest in your mind. The way I train, it always is something that's changing. And that's why I love Tonal so much. It's a different way to train. It takes the place of so many machines. You can do a full body workout. My quads literally burn. When I see the real-time stats, you know, I still have that like champion's mindset, okay, I can do better. In the beginning of my career, I didn't embrace strength. I had it, I looked it, I felt it. Once I embraced it and didn't really care what other people said or whatever people thought, people started to realize that strength is beauty. Embrace yourself, love it. It's so important to just have that self-confidence. That's what's so surprising about Tonal. It challenged me and it made me a lot stronger.
Tonal raised $130 million in recapitalization led by L. Catterton, Dragoneer, and others. In April, Tonal appointed Crystal Zell as CEO, previously Tonal's president, and before that, with customer-centric experience at Home Depot, SPG, and others. Recently, Tonal has appointed a new CFO, Ron Will, and a new Chief Product Officer, Jonathan Shotton. Tonal has narrowed the gap to profitability, with several months of adjusted EBITDA in the positive in 2023. Tonal is further investing in exciting new products, leveraging Tonal's lead in hardware and in AI, including generative AI. If you'd like to get in contact with VIP sales at Tonal, please email raed@transform.vc.
Well, first I want to call attention to, while we say AI plus impact equals disaster relief, my shirt says AI plus impact equals energy. And really, energy touches all of this, right? So energy touches manufacturing, it touches disaster relief. Those are two of our primary markets that we'll talk about more. But to answer the question, Raed, the original nexus is, I mean, like, look at the disparity between how we command energy and how we command data. When's the last time you've had to go out and really search for a cell signal? It happens sometimes, but probably not as often as you have to search for an electrical outlet or plug something in. And as we heard from just a couple of presentations ago, areas in manufacturing and distribution are adopting more and more digital devices. In this case, we have these mobile robots across cities. We have more electric cars, looking at flying planes, electric vertical takeoff and landing systems, delivery drones, all of these mobile systems that require energy. So in founding Reach, our goal was to say, how can we take a lot of the intelligence that we've built up in, you know, the software community and computational community and partner that with a lot of the stuff that we do on an energy stage, right? So the ultimate goal is to be able to go anywhere in any connected environment and pull energy down wirelessly like you would pull a cell signal. Now, those systems are not going to be directly analogous to each other. There's some differences between them, but that is the intention. So if we had an enabled room like this, any of the robots moving through here, any sensors, any drone, whatever you want, can tether up and receive energy wirelessly through directed beams of energy. And I know what you're probably thinking. Yes, we are all 100% checked off on safety by Underwriters Laboratory and by international standards, and have some deployments on that as well.
Yeah. So thank you. Better microphone. Awesome. So Chris and Reach Labs, they're literally able to send energy wirelessly from a ground station up to a drone. And then that drone can send the energy wirelessly down to a disaster area like Gaza or a front forward area or some remote village somewhere. Or even better, which is in the case of disaster relief in Hurricane Wilma and Katrina, where, you know, I went through, I made a lot of money as a result of that. But also when there's disaster and infrastructure is broken, Chris, you're able to deploy infrastructure rapidly and on the.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So most of our deployments, actually, all of our deployments right now are all indoors in manufacturing facilities, doing uptime for those robots like the AMRs, et cetera. But moving towards next year, 2024, we are getting our certification for the first outdoor deployments, and we'll be establishing those in a couple of major metropolitan areas. So that if the grid goes down, you can literally launch a drone or launch a balloon, like you said, and use that as an aerial platform to receive energy from where the grid is working and redirect it back to where it needs to be. And so that's where we're going to tie in with disaster relief, because we have a couple of ongoing, soon to be ongoing pilots with some major metropolitan areas where we're establishing this, or will be establishing this in key areas where the grid is prone to come down due to overuse, due to, you know, everyone charging their cars at once, or everybody running their heaters at the same time, as happened in Texas. And where those places happen, where there are grid vulnerabilities, the system's able to detect before the grid vulnerability comes to place, using the AI aspect of things, understand how to best route the energy wirelessly, and then deliver that energy in a fault-tolerant way. So we are working towards being able to provide that resiliency, and even move towards an area where we can leverage the technology to save lives in the disaster relief type area.
What are your key accomplishments in this past year?
This past year was by far our biggest year. So we did the longest range and highest power deployment of any wireless power system, beyond 1 meter, right? So not taking into account electric vehicle chargers, but things that actually are at a distance. Did the highest power, longest range deployment of that in history with our manufacturing partners, with Toyota Group. And we booked more in revenues with their contracts than we have spent to date. So a little north of 20 million. And we tripled our team. So we're now dealing with all of the growing pains that come with having a team that's gone 3x in a year, but that was our main accomplishments for this year.
That's incredible. How about the next 12 months? I know you have a couple of really exciting goals that you're going after.
Yeah. So we are retooling our system. So we're getting ready for our first real EVT builds, since a lot of stuff we've had to date has been prototype, and we're working with our manufacturers, the ones who build our systems. So we'll be launching our first real production build, not prototypes built by us, but straight off the line. We are increasing our performance at a distance. So our power at a distance is going to go up by 100x. And we'll be doing our first, again, outdoor approval demos where we'll be sending energy over about 1 kilometer. So between one building over 1 kilometer to a little aerial node that then is going to relay it back down to the ground to show that we can dispatch energy over a very long distance in an efficient way. So all of that's coming up in the next year if we meet our timelines.
So are we talking milliwatts or kilowatts? Or what are we talking in terms of energy, in terms of distances?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we're talking energy on the scale, or power on the scale of, for next year, about 1 to 3 kilowatts. So that's about as enough for a small home, about 1 to 3 kilowatts. And distance, we're capping out at 1 kilometer. But ultimately, we have some work with the Department of Energy where we're scaling the system larger. And we're looking to tens to, probably 10, 50 to 100 depending on where we play our cards, kilowatts. And that's actually for true to life grid scale resiliency, where we'll be looking over 5 to 10 kilometers. Beyond that, it'll be a while before we really get much more power or much more distance than that. That's already going to be pretty ambitious. But for next year, we're looking about 1 to 3 kilowatts and about a kilometer.
You've got some records you're trying to break, right? Oh, yeah. Yes.
Thank you. Yes, so we are going to break the world record for the longest perpetual flight. So we have one of our little aerial vehicles that we didn't build, but a third-party manufacturer, and we've retrofitted it with some of our receivers, and with a customer that we can't quite announce yet. That's one of the large municipalities in the United States. We're going to be demonstrating that we can keep that platform up at about half a kilometer, just floating there indefinitely. And the longest flight to date has been 2 hours, 33 minutes. And we've demonstrated in the lab that we can beat that. So we're hoping to do a press release and have the thing just float there forever.
That's awesome. And you chose a firefighter for your image. So tell me what you're doing with firefighters.
Yeah, great. Thank you. You're teeing them up. So one of the big areas that was actually an application brought to us by first responders, which we found really interesting, was this idea of using aerial platforms or drones as a first response mechanism. So in this case, we've been speaking with a couple of fire departments, again, around major metropolitan areas in the United States. And if this is their firehouse, they have a little drone that's sitting up there, and they have a drone operator. And the idea is, as soon as I get a 911 call, somebody flies this thing off to the site, takes a thermal camera, scans the building, and can tell the people, hey, you got to go to the back. That's where the fire is. These are the tools you need to bring. Because this drone can make it there way quicker than the actual fire truck. So one of the applications that have been brought to us, it takes about 2 to 3 minutes for the drone to get out of its little dock, get to altitude, and then fly off. And by the time it raises to altitude, it's lost about 10 to 20% of its battery life. So what the robotics chief in the fire department would like to do is have this perpetually sitting up there. So it's already at altitude, it already is fully charged, and it can dispatch on a moment's notice to go to any of the areas. And by the time you get there with the truck, you can tether back up to a separate energy node on the truck and keep it there for protecting the firefighters while they're working to make sure that you're monitoring the condition of the building. And so that's something we're really excited about, specifically in the disaster relief area, because it's right in our wheelhouse of what we can do as a company. And it's a area where we can really use technology for the betterment of society, and that's kind of what it's all about.
I think a member of our team or the audience brought up an idea, and I said I'd ask whether you can do it or not. But this whole, looting in the city. What if a drone-powered energy and wirelessly is basically chasing those thieves?
There are groups that are looking at that. It is not us directly. We can send energy to the moving platforms. We get to kind of got to thread the needle between what helps society and what becomes Skynet. And so we have to be very careful on how we selectively deploy systems. But we'll see the way the world shakes out with drone as a first responder, because there's definitely some folks that are looking at that.
That's awesome. We're going to open the questions to the audience.
Hey, this is great. Did you ever play StarCraft as a kid or as a teenager? Because this reminds me of Pylon, right? This is basically like a pylon, right? But yeah.
I never did, but I know what you're referencing.
Yeah, it's basically a pylon, which is fantastic. So my question was, what is the phenomenology of your transmission? Are you based on high frequency, say microwave? Is it laser based? Those have impact for example, adverse say weather conditions and interference.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a great question. So we are in the low millimeter wave band. So think like 20 to 30 gigahertz. That's where we are. So we are above microwave, sub a lot of the optical stuff. We've picked that band because we can be very efficient with it. Our transmitters and receivers have to be bigger than they would be optically, but we can go through dust, rain, fog, weather. We take very little hit from that, which is what allows us to have more resilience, I suppose, than optical systems. Although there are applications for optical systems similarly. One other point that I'll inject in here. For the types of applications we take, we work closely alongside human. And that with our frequencies of interest, we can do quite a lot of power without being crazy expensive and while staying inherently more safe. If we did the types of power that we were doing at optical, any sort of stray lines would potentially blind somebody.
Yep.
So that's why we stay where we are.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah.
I was just, one of my friends was building a company where they were trying to put solar arrays in geostationary orbit and then beam power to Earth, right? And so I was going to ask you about the spectral bands that you could do the beaming. There were some issues with the Defense Department on some bands were classified, and therefore they needed to beam power. That I don't know whether you ran into any of that. And the second follow-on was, did you need to be line of sight?
Two good questions. One, if you had a friend that was in the space-based solar community, he or she or they very well may know us and we might know them. It's not a huge community. We work very closely with the space-based solar people. They run at 10 gigahertz, which is a government band. I can speak more about that afterwards. All of our transmission is done in the international scientific and medical bands. So we are open, cleared internationally by the FCC and the IEEE. Our regulations are done through UL. I can talk more about that under Raed's laboratory. And in terms of, I'm conscious of time, in terms of line of sight, we are quasi line of sight is what I usually say, which is that wood, like dust, rock, that stuff doesn't really matter. Metal matters a lot. Foliage matters a lot. But for systems where you want lower power, like if I were to put a big metal wall and try to get power to a sensor, we can use the environment to redirect energy around the obstacle. You get an efficiency hit with that. So if you're trying to send, 7 kilowatts to a drone right here, you probably won't get it. But if you're trying to send a watt or two to a small sensor, then you're able to do it. It's a quasi line of sight. Thank you.
Any possibility to create a consumer device that will charge the phone and get rid of all these chargers? I mean, that's an impact on the environment that's unbelievable.
Yeah, absolutely. So for where we are right now as a company, the ROI doesn't quite stand there in the same way because our stuff isn't consumer grade cheap yet. Ultimately, as you continue to move down the maturity of the technology, that's 100% going to be an area that we as a company look into and that the industry as a whole will pursue. That's very, we've got some demos in our office in Redwood City where we can currently do that. It's one of our earlier investor demos. But again, if you look at the return on investment, we've found more traction in areas where rather than powering a cell phone, you're tying, for example, the value of the system directly towards robotic uptime, which has a clear calculable ROI for the customer. So as the systems continue to mature, we'll move more and more that direction, but not quite. Okay, I'd love to.
Great. Thank you so much, Chris. Thanks for joining us. So Hassan is an AI veteran. I think he started working on AI since he was a teenager or a young adult. And he's the former head of applied artificial intelligence at eBay. And that turned out, he wanted to do something else. So he moved to Amazon. He became the head of applied AI there, where every single product using language services was invented under Hassan's watch. Following that, he moved to Facebook, where he became the head of applied AI at Facebook. And then I had my way with him, and I sat him down for dinner, and then he had a bunch of ideas, and ultimately he decided on aiXplain. So if you think of AI as this black box filled with all these mathematical formulas that only the experts understand, issue is seldom times do these experts have to make the ethical choice or the strategic choice. Those choices are typically made by domain experts, someone who understands the business. Well, aiXplain and Hassan enables domain experts to architect, deploy, host AI solutions with zero AI expertise. So thanks, Hassan, for joining us. Welcome.
Yeah, so yeah, questions? Covered it.
I'll start off. The first question is, Hassan, what sort of impact did you have in mind when you founded aiXplain?
Happy to answer that. Thank you for having me. So I know Raed, I know Rama even longer than Raed, and they're great mentors actually for all of us which are benefiting from having them as investors and partners. Yeah, what drove me into building aiXplain is actually the 30 years of AI experience I had. You mentioned AWS, you mentioned eBay. There's also in the government business, SAIC, I was chief scientist there. There is always the two communities. One, the community is basically building technology, and then the other community, which is needing technology, AI capabilities to be built for them. And the domain experts are, as Raed said, the business people, not the scientists. And so the reason I actually had joined Amazon, AWS, is to democratize AI, to build basically like a platform so that everyone can benefit from the effort of AI. But AWS is built for the engineer more than anyone else. And that's not as democratic as I wanted it to be. So this is what aiXplain comes in. So aiXplain is built for two communities. For the scientist, which doesn't want to deal through engineering to get to the market, and for the business user, who actually wants immediate response, immediate solutions to be built right there when they're asking. And so today we have 3,200 users on our platform, 220 teams. And how are they engaging with aiXplain? So the business user is actually coming in and basically asking for a solution, like they would ask an engineer to build that solution to an agent. That agent understands basically the idea, what needs to be built, and then basically builds it right there in front of the business user's eyes. They can actually immediately experiment with it and say what's wrong with it. Not this is the wrong technology, use another technology, but basically by saying, no, the result which I'm seeing is not as good as I want it to be. Do something so that the result is closer to what I expect. And through a conversation, you can actually develop a solution. One of our customers is an insurance company. They know that they needed to use AI. Why did they need to use AI? So they are a home insurance company. They can actually, they have 75 agents for customers to call in and do their day-to-day job. I mean, that's fine. Now, hurricane happens, catastrophe event like a hurricane happens. Suddenly 10,000 people are wanting to be served immediately. I mean, their homes are broken, roofs need to be repaired, something. And for that reason, and the agents are very specialized, very knowledgeable, and you can't just quickly ramp up and ramp down agents of that sort. They're very, very domain, experienced about this domain. So you have to basically have someone build this kind of technology. They came into our platform. Within 45 minutes, they had a prototype to experiment with that. And then basically, a few weeks later, they had it basically as a pilot running. So we're helping domain experts to do things which they couldn't do, which they could only do with either solutions architects or scientists sitting side by side with them, understanding their domain, and in months, sometimes years, get that solution developed. With us, it was just an hour. So that's basically what we are offering. For the scientists, the other community, sorry about, for the other community, we are actually enabling them to be the better version of themselves. So they bring in technology. Let's say, for example, speech recognition. Some of the biggest ones in the market today bring in their speech recognition engine, put it on our platform. The platform evaluates it, benchmarks it against what is out there, and says, for example, for this domain, your engine is really cool, really awesome, better than anyone else. For the other domains, you have to do some work to get better. And instead of just saying the metric is better or worse, it actually also tells you what you need to do to improve on the system. So some of the Fortune 500 technology providers, they actually are being given, the engineering teams are given a direction on how to actually improve their systems, and that benefits actually everyone. Benefits them because their technology is growing and getting better and better, and benefits the, for example, insurance company in this case, because they are leveraging the best-in-class technology. It's improving month over month according to the metrics they have.
That's incredible. Tell us about Bel Esprit. So Bel Esprit is a new capability that aiXplain debuted not so long ago. So maybe tell us about that.
All right, Bel Esprit is a product which we just came out in October, and it's going to be GA. Your last question you're going to ask me, what's going to be in 2024? General availability. So we're going to basically take it live for everyone to use. Today, when you want to use Bel Esprit, you have to be waitlisted. We'll pull you in, allow you to experiment with it, and generate benefits for you, like our insurance customer, for example. What is Bel Esprit? Bel Esprit is an agent. That agent, which is basically doing that communication with you, understands your business, your industry, your domain, your specialized sidekick to some extent, building solutions for you or telling you what needs to be, what can be done. So Bel Esprit is actually, if we take the lid off what Bel Esprit is, Bel Esprit is an agent of agents. Thousands of agents can be leveraged to develop a solution for you. Among them, OpenAI's GPT-4, among them other things like Claude, among them also things which are very, very domain specific, for example. And we make them actually talk to each other and directed by Bel Esprit, these agents talk to each other and build the best solution for you. The executing agent, translating an idea into something else, is Bel Esprit. So basically, it will have all these agents which are smart, talk to each other, and then translating all these things into like a solution which can actually be immediately deployed in like minutes. You just need to click a button. I wish I could demonstrate that. Maybe later I'll be happy to demonstrate that. You can actually press the button and it goes live. Or Bel Esprit itself improves itself, so suddenly it will learn to do dubbing. Suddenly it understands how to serve the customer in a certain domain, etc., etc. So the Bel Esprit is an agent. Think about ChatGPT being your EA, automated EA, executive assistant. Bel Esprit is your solutions architect, building basically solutions for you right there, understanding your business. Whenever it doesn't understand the business, instead of coming up with things we heard earlier about hallucinations, right? Instead of hallucinating and building something which makes no sense, it's better asks. It will ask a question, did you mean this? Or I need that information. In the case of having no answer, it actually reaches out to a community of scientists. So instead of coming up with something, it goes out to 1,400 scientists out there which are specialized in AI to build an AI. So basically, it sends out a request for proposals. People can look at the RFP saying, oh, this is cool. I can do that. It kind of cost me maybe a couple weeks of work. And then they can actually send that through aiXplain to the buyer, to the business user, and then they can actually approve that, and then it goes. And yeah.
In line with the whole this movie analogies that Amr started. So who's seen Aladdin? Come on, everyone's seen Aladdin, okay? Well, what Hassan built is your personal genie, okay? That you tell this genie what you want, not how you want it, and the genie will just make it happen. And if they can't make it happen, they'll ask other genies, hey, other genies, help me build this. And we'll put out an RFP, and then they'll compete for the business, and whoever builds it for you, and the customer owns it. So that's fabulous. I want to open it to the audience, please, if you have any questions.
So how you validate your solution? You said, like, for example, you don't understand, you ask for more data, and we all, like in AI, we know better data, better AI. So for you, you're starting your training system from, let's say, from zero. So how you start the process and how you validate it for something special, like for example, very scientific, and how you select your scientific committee, like how you verify those actually, like for us when we do publication, you have like people to review it.
I know.
What's your committee? What's your criteria?
So this is a very, very good question. So there's multiple things. I mean, it's like a complex answer. I'm gonna try to simplify it. So one of the things is, one of the products is Esprit, like what we talked about earlier, but there is also another component. It's an agent again, which is called Benchmark, doing some of that. Helps you with identifying in which direction do you need to work. And maybe you know the metric, maybe you don't know the metric, but Benchmark can help with that. Second thing is, we built basically a knowledge graph. We built basically a system to understand how relationships of metrics, data, tasks, etc., are related to each other. We learned from 1.3 million papers. I can tell you, we're not covering everything in AI, but NLP, computer vision, some of that thing, we are doing really good in those things. So in essence, I mean, that basically helps you to build that. So and then identifying what kind of data you should actually put in and how you do evaluate. Using Benchmark, I can actually evaluate the quality of the data and tell you this doesn't fit, or I need from that maybe 100 times more, or something like that. Learning from the papers, learning from the data, and using Benchmark at the end of the day. Yeah. More details later we can discuss. Happy to.
We have a question with Sam.
So what's your favorite example? Just what's the best customer example use case that really demonstrates this?
Actually, the insurance use case was actually my favorite. I mean, so the customer came in and said, now we have the GenAI stuff. How can it help us? I mean, tell us how to help. And we were brainstorming with Esprit. Esprit came up with 6 different ideas. And that was the one, basically, they drilled down a little further and further, and then basically built the solution right there in front of their eyes. The CEO liked it so much. Basically, a couple of weeks later, we had the signature, and basically, this and consulting companies offered him something. I mean, they said, "Oh, we can do a year later. We can have this and that." And then basically, they saw in 2 weeks they could actually build the same thing. I mean, and it took them 2 weeks because they learned on their own data. They fine-tuned on their own data and whatnot. So that was a great experience, eye-opening for me.
Wonderful. Thank you, Hassan.
Thank you.
So Emna, you founded Flowfinitee. Pleasure to have you with us. And I'm going to hand the microphone over to Quinn, because she has all the questions for you.
I do. Is this working? Yes. Everyone can hear me. Great. Hey, Emna, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. So I'm excited to talk to you. You're doing so much in the VC world, in the founder world, all the things. Before we get into Flowfinitee, can you tell everybody a little bit about all the different things that you're working on?
Okay. Thank you first. And thank you actually for asking that question, because we have some Bridge GPs and LPs, which is my other company. So I want to explain why I'm here, because they're like, what are you doing as a portfolio company? But I'll say that the company that Transform Raed and Rama invested in is what allows me to run 2 companies. And I'll explain in a second what it is. But my background, pretty much, I've been a veteran entrepreneur for the past decade. And like, I wanted to tell the story. Like, my story goes into Flowfinitee, but I'll take a step back. Okay. I'm very passionate with impact. Like, everything I do in my life, I want to leave a legacy behind me. And that's from the moment, I started to understand the world. I grew up in Tunisia, North Africa, and I never cared for gender. I never cared for anything but execution. I'm your typical type A founder, 4.0, did mathalons when I was 13 years old, read 10 million books, did it all. But I also had a dance class and basketball, and I always wanted more. Actually, I don't know who
really
said...
boring.
I know.
You sound so boring.
Somebody said I wanted to be an astronaut. I wanted to be an astrophysicist not because I was passionate about the space, but because it was the most ambitious thing I could think of at that time, right? So just so you understand a bit of my mindset. And then I came to Silicon Valley. And the biggest thing that happened to me, the biggest stereotype was not about food or any of the classical thing. It was the gender imbalance. And I'll say this. I think from everything you've heard about Transform today, Rama and Raed, I think they're probably some of the best people who are trying to change this. Yet I'm the only woman CEO pitching today and talking to you. That tells you how hard it is to change the landscape. And so for me, when I started working on my previous mission that ties into Flowfinitee, it was all about making people's lives better, truly. Because I truly believe that in order for people to care for what's happening in the world, whether it's wars, disasters, changing the world, they need to have the time and brain bandwidth to think about it. And while I was doing that, I came across the surprise that I was not taken seriously. People thought I was crazy, like you, Raed, when your story was Jim. And I thought something was wrong with me. I thought I was not smart enough. I was not good enough. I didn't go to Harvard. I went to University of Arkansas, right? I'm a Southern girl. So I'm like, okay, what's wrong here? And then I realized I was using a playbook by men for men. No offense to all the men in this room. But this society, the VC world, the startup world, everything was built around the male persona. Whether how we pitch, whether how we build a business plan. Men are a lot more gamblers, we're a lot more risk averse. Yet women-led startups and women-led funds outperform their male counterparts, and we have the data to show so. Yet the bias is still there. And so my belief is that there's a lot of unconscious bias, right? And we tend to, in order to fix the problem, we always tend to go towards over-educating women and underfunding them. So I was like, okay, with my beautiful partner, Sophia, we're like, you know what? I know I'm already running my company, but I want to do this other company to go fix this. One for everybody else as a mission for all, because we believe by putting more money in the hands of women, they'll be more like Rama, and with Raed on the side, but Rama. They'll be more likely to invest in women CEOs. Women CEOs would be more likely to hire women in exec positions, hence creating more wealth. And the whole point is to create a ripple effect. To normalize rooms not looking like this, but the other way around. To normalize powerful rooms in the world, whether in politics and finance or anything, being diverse and not led by white men everywhere, whatever white means in the world, like in China and India or here, to be clear. So that's what Bridge is. That's why you said you do so much in the VC world, where we built a fundraising optimization platform. We provide GP-LP relationship building tools to help really change the look of the room. And Transform is actually a member. So I always joke with Raed, I say, I take your money both ways. You invest in one company and you're a customer in the other. So, but that's the story. Yeah.
Yeah. No, you can keep going. I'm good. You're okay. You're okay. All right. Amazing. So can you tell us a little bit about Flowfinitee? What is it?
Yes. So I said a bit of my story. So I said I'm a type A entrepreneur. And I also was a true workaholic. Because you got to learn from the people who did it best, supposedly. So that's how I was taught. In order to succeed, you have to work 7 days a week, 18 hours days. I even had an investor who said, pre-product market fit, if you're not like doing 20 hours a day, I won't invest in you. He literally said that. I'm like, bye. And I was going, Saturday, Sunday, I would be at the office till 2 a.m, leave 8 a.m. the next morning. By the way, I started other companies before, until I woke up paralyzed in my bed 5 years ago. Yep, you heard it. And nobody could get me. Only my CTO had my keys to my apartment. I was here by myself. I had just woken up, so I couldn't have my CTO come to my house. So it was very complex. And I had to go to the emergency room. And I realized that my workaholism caused that. And the thing is, nobody talks about this, whether you're working for big companies like Amazon, right? Or Apple. I mentioned the two cultures that are, personally, I think are too much on the other side of the workaholism. Or whether you're a founder. We don't talk about work-life balance. We don't talk about mental health. We don't talk about any of that. Yet when you go home, we fight with our spouses, with our kids. We're not there. We're not present. And we pretend this is not important. So I decided to build a company that fixes that. Because a lot of people, how many of you are good about their well-being? Have a great routine, focus, amazing. How many of you have bosses who care about that? And managers who care? Okay, 3. And that's why I built Flowfinitee. Because the thing is, as human beings, a lot of us want to do well, but if your company culture does not allow for that, if your boss is putting 20 meetings a week and expects you to still deliver whatever by the end of the week, they don't care if you're doing after hours. They don't care if you're fighting with your spouse. They don't care about that you had nobody to pick up your kid because they had a fever. Again, another stereotype or world built for the male persona, right? 9-to-5 job or 6. Kids get off at 3:30. Yeah, women are supposed to get them. So the point is, Flowfinitee is here to help people do better and companies do better. And we do that with actual data. And what we do, the core, we did a lot of research, we applied a lot of science to understand what really makes us better and productive. And historically, productivity was measured based on tasks accomplished or based on the boss's fear. They need to see you in the office, in their head, you're productive. That's why we see a post-COVID world where a lot of companies are forcing their employees to go back. But we're seeing a lot of turnover also in this industry. So the way we fix that pretty much is first bringing awareness to the person where they are able to optimize their focus using data and smart insights. But we also give the managers reports where they're able to see that productivity has nothing to do with deliverables, but it's more the quality of your time and your focus. And we help them with process-driven insights to do better. So,
amazing. It's okay. It's okay. So this is an amazing invention that you did and product. And so I'm just curious to know, what have you accomplished in the past year that you're proud of?
Yes, thank you. So this past year, the focus was actually after doing a lot of research, building the first version of the product, testing the market, getting the first signals of product market fit. We built the core team as well of engineers and marketers. And now we're officially coming out of stealth and launching first week of Jan. I'm answering the next question you're going to answer. So next year, our focus is to really validate product market fit in this sense. And also, today, our CAC is about $35 per user. We want to drop it to $5 per user. And you have an ambition of like getting to about 20,000 users by end of 2024.
Amazing.
So, thank you.
So clearly, Flowfinitee is already successful. It's going to continue to be so successful. What does success look like down the line, past the year, the next year? But what does impact and success look like for Flowfinitee?
So honestly, scaling my own impact. Today, I'm an influencer in the digital well-being space. I have about 10,000 followers, where I have content that I put out there every week, and I get a lot of people. So in this sense, I want Flowfinitee to become the reference, to scale beyond me, and to become the reference in digital well-being and work-life harmony. So that's a dream.
I love that. Yes, work-life harmony. Amazing. Okay, can we open it up for questions?
Yeah, hi, thank you. And this is very inspiring. I have 3 girls, and this gave a lot of motivation. So question, who is your typical user? And how do you assess the success of the use of your service and solution?
Great question. Thank you. So obviously the problem I mentioned, I saw a lot of heads doing this. So a lot of different personas. So in an ideal world, everybody would use it. But of course, when you start a company, you cannot target everybody. So for us, impact a billion and make a billion. Unfortunately, to create impact in the world we live in, you have to follow the money as well. And today, the biggest ROI we find is with the builder persona. And the builder persona is either the developer, designer, product. People really are in tech around building the solution. And for us, the ROI is based obviously on the time you save. And so the growth between focus time versus collaboration time that you have on a daily basis. And then our aim is to be able to connect actually to the financial services of the company. That's the next level. And to translate that into actual saved dollars for the company. So yeah.
Hi, yeah, very inspiring. Thank you so much.
I only have boys, but hopefully next year I'll have a girl. Putting that aside.
I'm having a boy on the way, so, you know.
Awesome. Like Raed, I have a female co-founder at our firm, investment firm. I want to know, from your perspective, what is the number one thing that investors can be doing to support you and founders like you to fix the gender imbalance in VC and in startups?
Thank you. It's definitely a question I get a lot, but great question. The thing is, it's a bit of a tough question, right? Because here, like a lot of people will tell you, oh, there's not enough pipeline, or like all the excuses in the world. But the idea is that to be very self-aware. And I know it's very broad because there's a lot of unconscious bias, right? Like you might have it and not know it in that sense. In the questions you ask, like I had an experience recently where I was talking to, I'm not fundraising right now, but like I was talking to a VC, and the main GP is a woman, and she loved it. She's like, I'm willing to put my personal money even if like my co-GP doesn't come in, but I want to meet my co-GP. And I meet the co-GP, who's a lovely person. He's really a nice guy, and I'm sitting there and seeing how every single question that I was asked was all about everything that's not going to work for my company. And it is true. There's a Harvard study that shows that men and women get asked different questions. Men are more willing to gamble on men and believe their story than women's story. Especially that women tend to be a lot more conservative in their numbers. So being aware of that, being aware like, oh, I'm not seeing the multi-billion within 10 years, it's usually BS from the guys. I have guy founder like buddies, I don't want to call them friends, who literally say to me, Emna, I lie and I don't care because I want to get the money. They're going to execute, but they don't care how they get to the money. So being aware of that, fighting the follower mentality of the VC space. It's not because a big hero company put money that you follow blindly. And where it's a bit better this year because of the financial crisis, right? But like prioritizing for profitability, things like that women tend to go more towards, rather than fundraising in Series A, like investing in a Series A where they have only 14K in MRR. And I've seen those deals, right? So like being aware of this, and this is for everybody, being self-aware that we get asked different questions. We are judged because we're more conservative. We are judged because we're more transparent and truthful, right? You can ask Raed like how we talk, and I'm very straightforward. And by the way, I'll take this note to say, like, because I love both Rama and Raed, but I've known Raed for years. Raed, and he didn't tell me to say this, to be clear, I'm very blunt as a person, is one of the best investors in this industry because he truly cares. He doesn't care you're a man or woman or anything. It took him we were friends for years before, he's seen what I've done. And yet he was very tough on me when it came to investing, due diligence, really understanding. And I was very transparent, and he took that as well. He was not like, oh, you're not selling me this big dream. No, I'm selling you reality. So being aware of that, I know it's I'm repeating, but that's the most powerful thing you can do.
Amazing. I think that's where we're going to have to leave it for right now because we need to go to our last one. But I encourage you all to come and see Emna in between this session and the next. So thank you very much. Thank you.
If roads could speak, they'd ask what's taking so long. Tossing every, are we there yet? That we've muttered over the years right back at us. Because it's 2023, and the shift to clean energy still feels like it's just beginning. And don't get us wrong, it is beginning. And that's a great start, but it needs to happen faster. If roads could speak, they'd ask to see what progress we're making. So we'd show them what we launched in 2021. A new way to deliver clean energy to any electric vehicle. Fully autonomous modular battery swapping. A way to finally make clean energy as quick, convenient, and cheap as gas. If roads could speak, they'd tell us to pick up the pace. Which is what we're doing. Improving the time we deliver 100% charge from just 10 minutes to now just 5. Creating an elevated user experience that's safer and more streamlined than ever before. And building stations that used to take weeks in just days. Instant infrastructure so cities like San Francisco, Madrid, and Kyoto can get online faster. If roads could speak, they'd tell us they're ready for 1 billion electric cars. So that's our goal, making electric mobility accessible for all of us. And we're here to make it happen, with all of you.
In a few minutes, I'm going to invite Khaled Hassounah to join us. He, unfortunately or fortunately, is in Japan today. He's unable to be physically with us, so he's going to join on Zoom. But before we invite him into the Zoom, I want to share with you first of all, a quick anecdote. As you recall, when I moved to Canada, when I moved here from Canada, I wrote my family a letter saying, impact a billion, make a billion. And then I would say 3 months later, I meet Khaled. And he says, I want to put 1 billion electric cars on the road. So the first thing that came to mind, wow, that's like 3 persons per car. This guy wants to impact 3 billion people. He's 3 times more ambitious than me. And that's when I realized the beauty of being in Silicon Valley. Because I'm often made to feel that I'm the dumbest guy in the room and of recent on the Zoom. And that's really the profound thing why we think Silicon Valley is such a great place, but it's really quite insular, and hence the Impact a Billion initiative and roadshow. What Ample does is they provide full electric energy to any EV brand, any brand at all, in under 5 minutes. And their business model is really quite interesting. They charge 0 upfront. They only charge a fee per mile. That is 20% cheaper than gasoline. Ample makes more money per Uber car than Uber. So we're proud of Ample and every other company. I'm pleased to report that after we invested, we were one of the early investors we were one of the very early investors in Ample. Since we've invested, large institutions from globally recognized institutions have invested after us, of course. We are little commercial. Includes Blackstone, includes Shell Energy, includes ENEOS, which is the Shell of Japan, PTT, the Shell of Taiwan, or Thailand, sorry, and Repsol, which is the Shell of Spain. Uber has made a global commitment to convert their entire fleet to electric cars. In fact, they committed to moving their entire fleet in the city of London, England, to electric cars. There's no solution on earth that can help them arrive at that promise other than Ample. We project that all our companies are going to do extraordinarily well. We think Ample is probably going to be one of our first $1 trillion outcomes. Really, really proud of all our founders and all their companies. Oh, all right, Khaled is here.
Yeah, we're having video issues. I think there's some problem with the setup of the meeting, but at least we're able to talk.
Okay, wonderful. So just imagine a really handsome, good-looking guy, very smart. Khaled, lovely to have you with us. Thanks for joining on the Zoom. So I'm going to start with the same question I've asked every founder here is what sort of impact did you want to effect by founding Ample? First of all, before we do that, sorry, I'm going to come back. What is Ample? Why don't you tell everyone what Ample is and then tell us what impact?
Absolutely. And I think in answering that question, I think I'll be able to answer both really at the same time, right? So Ample, in a nutshell, is a battery swapping company. It's often a dirty word in the industry, but what that really means is that we deliver energy to an EV by swapping the batteries in and out of it. So the idea is that you drive into our swapping station, as you saw in the video, I'm assuming at this stage, a smart robot comes, takes a battery out, puts a battery in, and in doing that, it gives you 100% charge in really few minutes, and then drive off with a full charge. So that's kind of technically speaking what Ample is. But if I just tie it back to the question you were asking earlier, which is what is it we're trying to accomplish? The problem we're really trying to solve is how do you get as many people into electric car as fast as possible with the infrastructure that we have today, or as much of it as we can utilize. So our goal would be to really not have everybody have to do so many compromises. Effectively, we call it kind of EV without compromise. So the idea is that you should be able to drive an electric car in more or less the same way you drive a gas car. It should be as fast, it should be as cheap, it should be as convenient, and it should not require continuous government support just to be able to put people in EVs. We should be able to do that economically and profitably almost from day one. And that's kind of our target and what we're trying to accomplish.
Fabulous, thank you. What are the key accomplishments of Ample in the last year?
Sure. So I think, Ample, we're kind of really making a transition and a transformation. As you might have mentioned, we started 9 years ago, and initially we were building a technology but that we said can fit into any EV as is without making any modification whatsoever. It's cheaper than building a fast charger. It's really fast and can be deployed very rapidly, right? So that's kind of the technical goal. And the first few years were spent on proving the market, proving the technology works, getting it to be actual real-world technology deployed. And we got to a point where the fleets are asking for it. We've been driving on it for multiple years, and it got to a point where our barrier to entry was going to be getting the automakers on board. So getting some of the largest automakers in the world, not just to say, yes, we think that's a good idea, but to actually start changing the way they build vehicles so that they integrate Ample's technology at the factory. So this last year, our main target, that was the last kind of piece of the puzzle. And our main target was getting a large number of automakers to do that integration. We've been working with a number of them. We announced Daimler Trucks a couple of months ago. In few days, we're going to make another announcement with one of the three largest automakers in the world. And we're working with the others as well that are going to be announced over the next month. So this year was kind of the focus of moving from, okay, this is a great idea, to let's get automakers to sell cars with Ample technology built at the factory. And once we're able to accomplish that, of course, you can see that the sky is the limit, because now anyone can go buy an Ample-powered car. We just need to build enough infrastructure for them to use it.
So are you going after consumers right now, or who's your target? Who would buy the Ample cars?
So, by saying a billion EVs on the road, you can see that our goal would be anyone should be able to own an electric car and use the Ample swapping system, whether it's a consumer or a fleet. That said, kind of our strategy started from fleets. We realized that a lot of the failures of swapping solutions in general in the past was focusing on consumers too soon. And hence, we kind of thought about it very differently. We said fleets cannot use public infrastructure. They don't have a garage at home to charge. They often very operationally sensitive. For them, it's very important that the cost of infrastructure really does not change their economics from the gas model. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to make the transition. So that, to us, if we can prove that fleets can use EVs in any way, in the same way that they use gas cars, then that would be a huge win and a proof point. But the second thing also is that we can get a very small number of customers to move a very large number of cars to electric very quickly. And that's kind of what we're focusing on. So Uber has been a partner for a long time. We're working with Amazon delivery, as well as a number of other kind of very large fleets. So our focus initially is on fleets. Let's get fleets to make the transition to electric very quickly. But once you use that as a Trojan horse to create infrastructure, when there's enough infrastructure installed, then consumers become really easy, because the reason consumers don't think twice about buying gas cars is because there's gas stations everywhere. And if we use fleets to build that infrastructure, then we'll easily transition to consumers after.
No, that's great. And the nice thing with fleets is they put, because you charge per mile, they put a lot of predictable miles. Yes.
Very, very true. From day one, we can, because we have you can sign a contract that says we're going to buy X number of miles from you. And one of the things that our solution has as an inherent advantage is that if you use our system, then most likely you'll get the vast majority of your miles from our system. So it's very, very predictable revenue to a degree where we can finance the infrastructure deployment just through the account receivables that we can predict.
Khaled, everyone's saying batteries are harming the planet, and mining for the materials are harming the planet. So you're swapping batteries here. So what are you harming the planet?
A little bit less than gas. or a lot less than gas. But I would say it this way, which is no matter what you manufacture, you are going to create a carbon footprint, right? At the end, it's a balance of your carbon footprint. Is for the lifetime of the vehicle, are you able to reduce the overall carbon footprint of the whole utilization, from the manufacturing of it to the usage of it and the fueling to the recycling of it at the end? And EVs in general. I mean, I know there's a lot of people who kind of try to argue otherwise, but no matter how you look at it, EVs in general will help there. That said, it's important to focus on three things, which we're able to make a huge difference in, right? Like, one of them is that there's this race to put as much battery as possible into these EVs, even though most of the time you don't use them. And one of the fundamental advantages of our modular battery swapping is that you can on the fly adapt the size of the battery based on the use case. So if most of the time you're driving a small number of miles, we can put a smaller battery in your car, except the few times in which you're going to drive a large number of miles, we can put larger battery. So overall, the end effect is that we actually have less batteries in the system than more batteries in the system. So that's effect number one. Effect number two is that we can recycle a lot more effectively. One of the advantages we have is that we're swapping batteries. What that means that once a battery reaches end of life, you don't need to go to a scrapyard to try to recover it, which is an almost impossible job. You just go to our station and pick it up. You can immediately use a second life application, and then you can recycle it. So that's the second part that make it really, really easy to recoup all that metal and recycle all of these batteries. But the third, and I think the part we're most excited about, is that because we can recharge the batteries independently from putting energy in the car, we can almost immediately transition to renewable energy. If you're charging your car at 6 p.m., there's very high likelihood you're not getting that energy from the sun, because the sun is shining at 3 p.m. or at noon. And because kind of we have these swapping stations charging these batteries slowly when renewable energy are most available, then we can actually transition to renewable a lot faster without using the huge advantage of being able to get energy very, very fast into the vehicle. So kind of we can have our cake and eat it too. So there's like multiple dimensions, and I scratch the surface. There's a lot of areas, but just in the extent of in the interest of brevity, I focus on these three areas. But we can really make a big difference in reducing the overall carbon footprint of a larger deployed solution.
Thank you, Khaled. Any questions from the audience?
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Khaled. Question. So would this apply to existing electric vehicles or just the new ones that would be compatible with Ample?
Yeah, this is a very, very good question. So, and one thing I didn't emphasize a lot, but I'll mention a few seconds, which is what we pioneered. The fundamental technological innovation at Ample is the modularization of the battery. The fact that our battery is modular, and what that means is that we can put more or less of them based on the space available in the car. But the end effect of that is that we can install our system in any vehicle that currently exists on the road without making any modification to the vehicle itself. So we already support 20 different car models. We're launching with 4 this year, or Q1. And what that means is that the cars as is will be compatible with Ample. Now, that said, you will have to install our system at the factory. So it's a tool, a part you install that it gets installed instead of the original battery, you install our system. And to be honest, we debated a lot early on in Ample of, do we want to go and modify cars on the road, etc. But if you look at where we are with electrification, there's orders of magnitude more cars that are going to come on the road that have already been on the road. So we'd much rather kind of focus on, you just go and buy the car with the Ample technology than focus too much on kind of the tiny percentage of cars that are already electric. But that said, we will, and that's what automakers love us. That's why we're working with so many of them, is because we don't need them to re-engineer the vehicle to adapt to our system. We literally kind of can fit into any car as is.
We have a question there.
Khaled, great job. This is a big adventure, and the providing power to EV is really where everything is held up nowadays. But what's going to happen to the gas stations? I mean, do we need gas stations to charge EV? Is your system going to be built on every gas station, or the gas station, you don't need that? You can put your module or your structure in the parking lot, in anywhere.
Yeah, it's a very good question. I mean, I'll tell you this, which is, if you look at our strategic investors, we have some of the largest energy companies in the world on our cap table. So Shell, Enios, PTT, Repsol, all of them are significant investors. And the reason they are is because all of them, as you said, have massive real estate that today delivers energy to cars. And the fundamental problem they have is they're all trying to get into charging. But as we all know, the fundamental model of how a gas station works is that you drive in for 5 minutes, 10 minutes max, you buy your snack, you leave. And that kind of amount of volume of vehicles coming through it is what makes the economic model works. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been profitable. And suddenly what they're doing is they're putting these chargers where you have to, instead of 5-10 minutes, have to stop for half an hour to an hour, and it kills the model. So it just doesn't work. So they're trying to install it because they don't have a choice, but it really doesn't work with them. So for example, I'm here in Japan right now because one of our significant partners is Enios, where we're going to be installing stations at their gas stations, where now you can come and get your electricity or you can get your gas. We're already installing in Madrid with Repsol on the gas station. So that's one thing we are going to be doing. But also, our stations do not require construction. You can build them above ground. They're so inexpensive that you can also put them elsewhere. So we both have the option of putting in gas stations because it's available, and these energy companies trying to find a good approach for how to electrify and get into this economy. But we're not limited to that. We can really install it anywhere, any warehouse, any empty piece of land, 2.5 parking spots. We can install a station in a week, and that's a big part of our superpower. So one quick thing I'll touch on is that we all think about speed of delivering energy. We actually think what's going to make a difference is the speed at which you can create infrastructure. Profitably, of course, but the speed at which you can create infrastructure. Once everybody comes to electric, you have to build infrastructure fast enough for them to be able to adopt it.
Great. We have one more question.
Yes. Hi, Khaled. Congratulations first, I want to say, because you're going after something amazing, and we'd love to hear more of your name in the media than hearing other names. And in that sense, so a friend of mine in the audience just mentioned, technically you compete with Tesla on their charging business. So have you ever thought about, like, I know it's a huge investment, but like actually having your own car as a way to go faster to the market, kind of the opposite model of Tesla. Like they start with the car, now they're charging. Like, I mean, yes, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, that's a good question. We actually don't compete with Tesla, right? So Tesla is building chargers for their own cars. And even though everybody's trying to adapt to their standard, you can hear the screams of agony from the board of directors of all the automakers, where they used to pay Tesla tons of money to get ZEV credits, and now they're paying them to own their data, right? So in a way, there's a big concern there. A lot of people don't want to do that. And I doubt that Tesla will emerge as the standard for charging. I just don't think people will give them the keys to the industry that way. But in a way, we think of us more as a gas station. So like our relationship to an automaker is the same as Shell is to GM, right? So we're not, we want to be where you get your electric energy. We're the gas station of electric. And we really want to maintain that. So we're not interested in building cars. I think we have some of the largest automakers in the world who are going to build cars that are Ample compatible, and they're going to sell them for us. We don't even need a sales team. We just need to build enough infrastructure to deliver energy. So in a way, we're kind of want to be more like a Shell and a BP and an Aramco than we want to be like a GM or a Hyundai. We just want to be kind of the infrastructure solution.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. We're going to take, and only because you're not here, we're going to take a couple more questions. Otherwise, and the nice thing with your model, Khaled, is you're building infrastructure in response to particular demand, as opposed to having to build a whole bunch of infrastructure first.
That's correct. And that's the beauty of the fleet model, is that we really, in the beginning of the year, we know exactly where we need to build infrastructure, and we can achieve very high utilization from our infrastructure, where effectively we can be operationally profitable at anything we deploy within less than a year. So that's a huge advantage of kind of this approach.
Yeah, it's amazing advancement in the EV charging. Have you ever thought about franchising to communities from a station standpoint? Let me give you an example. You know, you're talking about gas stations where, let's say in Jordan, or let's say in the Middle East, you can actually franchise the model So somebody will build it, pay for it to be built, and you just share profit sharing with them on a franchisee kind of approach. From a consumer standpoint, if that's something in your mind. Thank you.
No, really, really good question. I mean, that's maybe looking ahead, maybe a couple of steps, right? So one of the things we are really very dialed into is that we want to create an amazing experience. One of the fundamental problems with charging today is that 40% of chargers just don't work the first time you come to them, right? That's a horrible experience. If you're depending on that energy source to drive your kids to school and go to work and do your deliveries and do your business, it's a very flawed kind of infrastructure to build your business and your life on. So we are laser focused on creating a great experience. So initially, our target is we want to perfect that. We have a team in San Francisco that can manage stations in Tokyo, already happening today. They can do that with a 99.95% uptime. And that means we need to keep things in-house for a little bit until we perfect the tools, the reliability, and maintain that as we scale. Now, the next step after that is we work with partners, ENEOS, Shell. As an example, we have a few others, kind of maybe Japanese trading companies and companies in Asia and Europe, where maybe we'll go with a franchise model, but maybe more of a joint venture model. But our target is exactly what you described. Our hope is that within 2 to 3 years, the technology is so easy to deploy, the operations are so centralized and simple that we can franchise them a lot easier, because the gas model, station model does work. And we should learn from it as we move into electrification, take the good things out of it. And franchising is definitely an area that we do want to focus on. It's just not day one, because we want to control the experience and we want to be able to scale very quickly initially.
Great. We have a final question online. It says, is there a focus on a development plan on the freight or logistics industry? And this will be our last question.
Yeah. I mean, yes, 100%. We are working with Daimler Truck. I can't say too much, but let me say this, which is we're working with them on Model S, which is kind of a small last mile delivery. We already can support the Model M, which is kind of a middle mile truck. And we're working with 3 different automakers. I can't mention names right now yet. We try to be careful and not announce too soon. We don't want to do the Silicon Valley thing. You have a dream and you talk about it. But we're pretty advanced in actually thinking through how we would support much larger formats. So yes, 100%. I mean, the beauty of modularity is that you can put 6 batteries in a car, but you can put 30. And hence, really, the sky is the limit on size and shape. We will need to adjust how we do the swapping and the mechanics, but not in a very fundamental way. But yes, that's an excellent question. It's definitely focus. And it's kind of interesting because we wanted to stay narrow in our focus initially, but the automakers are pulling us because they have a fundamental problem. They just don't have infrastructure to sell the cars they want to sell. And middle mile and long range package delivery and freight is definitely a huge pain point right now.
Khaled Hassounah, founder of Ample in Japan. Thank you so much for your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you. Pleasure.
All right. So as we wrap up, we're just going to talk about our impact, like you heard us say before. And Rama, please join me right here beside me. So in terms of our team, like I said, we used to be 100% male. Today, we're 40% female. And in terms of the portfolio metrics, we used to be also 100% male portfolio founders. Today, we're 30% female. So we're improving, and we still have much more to go. I'd love to invite our advisors and our friends.
So before we do that, I wanted to just mention one thing. I mean, ours is a business of trust. Our LPs, our investors, trust us with their money, and we appreciate that and honor that and make sure that they know that we're using their money very carefully and wisely. And this is where the theme of impact plays a big role, because it's our collective responsibility to fix what's happening in the world, and it starts right here where companies are growing from the ground up. And it's also a trust between us and the founders that you've seen. I mean, many of them are far more experienced than Raed and I and have built amazing companies. So for them to trust their reputation with us is also a really big deal, and we appreciate and honor that. And to do that effectively, we have advisors. So I want to call out one advisor today because he has been a mentor to both Raed and I in the past year. This is a gentleman who was on Obama's advisory team, and he's now advising Governor Wes Moore. Safir Rab, we'd love for you to start out and come here and join us. We want to thank him very much for guiding us on this journey of impact. And like Safir, we have many other advisors who are playing this role. They're not here with us physically, but they really play a great part in us doing what we're doing. So now we can invite our team, who also have done an amazing job putting this event together. We could not have done it without them. So if you all want to come up and join us and be recognized. These young men and women come from different industries. Some of them are still in college and learning. Others are mid-career professionals that are experienced in everything from climate to banking to design to all sorts of walks of life, physiotherapy. And I think this is what makes this team so unique, is because we're not just all about finance. We're about everything that's happening in and around finance and tech. And with this collective knowledge, we're able to, make the amazing things that that our founders are making. So thank you all for being with us, and thanks, team.
Well, that's great. This was a great day. Successful first annual general meeting. What do you think?
Everyone, a round of applause. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here.